It's been so long since we've done this. Alright. Should be starting. Alright. Hi, YouTube. Hello, YouTube. I'm so sorry. It's been a while. It was Christmas break and New Year's, and has it been 2 weeks? It's been over a week since we streamed on YouTube. I'm very sorry about that, but I'm very excited to be getting back into things tonight because we're still kind of easing back into our regular schedule. Tonight we're reading at least one story. We'll see how it goes. 1 to 3 stories from the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. We are going to be starting our next book on Sunday night, and I will be streaming it also on YouTube. And we're going to be starting the Odyssey. We'll be reading the Odyssey starting on Sunday. But tonight, Sherlock Holmes, I'm very excited about it. It's been a while, although I will say Sherlock Holmes stories are some of the more challenging things for me to read. Just in terms of how they're written, they are incredibly dialogue heavy. Sometimes just pages and pages of one character just monologuing. And, okay, Banana, you're saying Sherwood Holmes in chat, and I don't know if you're being cute and silly or if I said that and you're calling me out. Did I accidentally say that? I was kind of thinking about Robin Hood, so it could have happened. Now, for the past, like, couple of years, we've been working our way through this tome, which is, it includes both the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. We've read all of those stories, and we are now reading through the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes, and we are about to start story number 5 in that collection, which is called The Musgrave Ritual. I've never read it myself. I'm not actually sure what it's about. Twitch chat just trolling me as usual. I didn't say that, Yakanona. Okay, thank you. Oh yeah, let me switch over to multi-chat mode and multi-activity mode so I can see what's happening on YouTube here in OBS as well. And yes, for anyone in Twitch chat that would like to support the YouTube venture, if you're able to open up the YouTube stream and watch from over there, that really helps with the watch hours that I need that go towards getting YouTube monetized, which is a hope that I have for 2026. So, but no pressure. It's all good either way. Just letting you know. The hat is nice over here. You're such brats. Brats. Helps End is really easy to do. Thank you, Yakanono. I mean, I know some people are just like watching on their phone. You can only have one or the other open. And I know chat and such is more active on Twitch. So absolutely no judgment if you're just sticking on Twitch. I'm just letting people know if they want to help out in that way and if they're able to, that the option's there. If you spam hearts, it raises her morale. It's true. Yeah. Also, if you leave a like and a comment, apparently that helps too. I'm still learning the whole algorithm thing. But I am excited for how much, I'm excited this time next year, by next New Year's, what the YouTube is going to look like, because it's very new. I only started uploading things and going live on it in November. It's very new. So, yeah. Okay. And and that's the it's the first link that I've put there in Twitch chat. All right, let's dive into things. Wait, I need a hefty elbow rest. Okay. You're pretty stoked about it? Even getting notifications of the chapters as they go online. Oh, yay! Yeah, I know my schedule has been all over the place. When I was working on each of the two complete books that are up, which are Carmilla and A Christmas Carol, I was just trying to get things up. I just want there to be a foundation of content up. And so it would be chapters going up every day and then a gap. That is not how I'm going to do it overall. Eventually I'd like to establish a rhythm and set days that they go live, probably on the days that I don't stream, right? But yeah, those things can be finessed as we go along. Right now I'm just trying to get stuff up there. All right. Moonstar, hello, happy new year, welcome back. Hello, hello, it's so good to see you. I hope you had wonderful holidays. Thank you, Moonstar, thank you. Okay, so we are reading from the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes, and this story is called The Musgrave Ritual. An anomaly which often struck me in the character of my friend Sherlock Holmes was that, although in his method of thought he was the neatest and most methodical of mankind, and although also he affected a certain quiet primness of dress, he was nonetheless, in his personal habits, one of the most untidy men that ever drove a fellow lodger to distraction. Not that I am in the least conventional in that respect myself. The rough and tumble work in Afghanistan, coming on the top of a natural bohemianism of disposition, has made me rather more lax than befits a medical man. But with me there is a limit, and when I find a man who keeps his cigars in the coal scuttle, his tobacco in the toe end of a Persian slipper, and his unanswered correspondence transfixed by a jackknife into the very center of his wooden mantelpiece, then I begin to give myself virtuous airs. I have always held, too, that pistol practice should distinctly be an open-air pastime, and when Holmes, in one of his queer humors, would sit in an armchair with his hair trigger and 100 boxer cartridges and proceed to adorn the opposite wall with a patriotic VR done in bullet pox, I felt strongly that neither the atmosphere nor the appearance of our room was improved by it. Our chambers were always full of chemicals and of criminal relics, which had a way of wandering into unlikely positions and of turning up in the butter dish, or in even less desirable places. But his papers were my great crux. He had a horror of destroying documents, especially those which were connected with his past cases. And yet it was only once in every year or two that he would muster energy to docket and arrange them, for as I have mentioned somewhere in these incoherent memoirs, the outbursts of passionate energy when he performed the remarkable feats with which his name is associated were followed by reactions of lethargy, during which he would lie about with his violin and books, hardly moving. Save from the sofa to the table. Thus, Month after month, his papers accumulated until every corner of the room was stacked with bundles of manuscript which were on no account to be burned, and which could not be put away, save by their owner. Oh, Jane, you're awake for YouTube. Yay. This is such a great character description, isn't it? Also, I totally get it about the stacks of paper. I understand him. One winter's night, as we sat together by the fire, I ventured to suggest to him that, as he had finished pasting extracts into his commonplace book, he might employ the next 2 hours in making our room a little more habitable. He could not deny the justice of my request, so, with a rather rueful face, he went off to his bedroom, from which he returned, presently pulling a large tin box behind him. This he placed in the middle of the floor, and squatting down upon a stool in front of it, he threw back the lid. I could see that it was already a third full of bundles of paper tied up with red tape into separate packages. "There are cases enough here, Watson," said he, looking at me with mischievous eyes. "I think that if you knew all that I had in this box, you would ask me to pull some out instead of putting others in." "These are the records of your early work, then?" I asked. "I've often wished that I had notes of those cases." "Yes, my boy. These were all done prematurely, before my biographer came to glorify me." He lifted bundle after bundle in a tender, caressing sort of way. "Now, these are not all successes, Watson," said he, "but there are some pretty little problems among them. Here's the record of the Tarleton murders, and the case of Vambry, the wine merchant, and the adventure of the old Russian woman, and the singular affair of the the singular affair of the aluminium crutch, as well as a full account of Ricoletti of the club foot and his abominable wife. And here, now, this really is something a little recherché." He dived his arm down to the bottom of the chest and brought up a small wooden box with a sliding lid, such as children's toys are kept in. From within, he produced a crumpled piece of paper, an old-fashioned brass key, a peg of wood with a ball of string attached to it, and 3 rusty old discs of metal. "Well, my boy, what do you make of this lot?" he asked, smiling at my expression. "It is a curious collection." "Very curious, and the story that hangs around it will strike you as being more curious still." "These relics have a history, then?" "So much so that they are history." "What do you mean by that?" Sherlock Holmes picked them up one by one and laid them along the edge of the table. Then he reseated himself in his chair and looked them over with a gleam of satisfaction in his eyes. Hey, Indy J, hello. "These," said he, "are all I have left to remind me of the episode of the Musgrave ritual." I had heard him mention the case more than once, though I had never been able to gather the details. "Well, I should be so glad," said I, "if you would give me an account of it." "And leave the litter as is?" he cried mischievously. "Your tidiness won't bear much strain after all, Watson. But I should be glad that you should add this case to your annals, for there are points in it which make it quite unique in the criminal records of this or, well, I believe, of any other country. A collection of my trifling achievements would certainly be incomplete, which contain no account of this very singular business." Oh, he's so clever. He's absolutely playing him. And Watson knows it. but would rather hear the story. Which kind of just highlights how they're so good for each other. You may remember how the affair of the Gloria Scott and my conversation with the unhappy man whose fate I told you of first turned my attention in the direction of the profession which has become my life's work. Now, you see me now when my name has become known far and wide, and when I'm generally recognized both by the public and by the official force as being a final court of appeal in doubtful cases. Well, even when you knew me first, at the time of the affair which you have commemorated in A Study in Scarlet, I had already established a considerable, though not a very lucrative, connection. You can hardly realize then how difficult I found it at first, and how long I had to wait before I succeeded in making any headway. Well, when I first came up to London, I had rooms in Montague Street, just round the corner from the British Museum, and there I waited, filling in my too abundant leisure time by studying all those branches of science which might make me more efficient. And now and again cases came in my way, principally through the introduction of old fellow students, for during my last years at the university there was a good deal of talk there about myself and my methods. The third of these cases was that of the Musgrave ritual, and it is to the interest which was aroused by that singular chain of events, and the large issues which proved to be at stake, that I trace my first stride towards the position which I now hold. Hi, Zen. This is kind of... I feel like I've never heard or seen anything about when Sherlock was young and, like, went to university. And just the fact that he was like, I know what I want to be doing, but I don't have enough credibility for people to just, like, let me do it, let alone, like, pay me for it. But that he spent... because he just seems like this, sometimes, like, omniscient person. He knows so much about so many random things, and this is him being like, I sat down and studied those things, and, like, he has the huge help of an eidetic memory. that really helps. But just the fact that he was like, yeah, let's just learn about every topic which may pop up when I'm trying to solve a case. I guess he was at uni. Yeah. Reginald Musgrave had been in the same college as myself, and I had some slight acquaintance with him. He was not generally popular among the undergraduates, though it always seemed to me that what was set down as pride was really an attempt to cover extreme natural diffidence. In appearance, he was a man of an exceedingly aristocratic type, thin, high-nosed and large-eyed, with languid and yet courtly manners. He was indeed a scion of one of the very oldest families in the kingdom, though his branch was a cadet one which had separated from the northern Musgraves some time in the 16th century, and had established itself in western Sussex, where the manor house of Hurlstone is perhaps the oldest inhabited building in the county. Something of his birthplace seemed to cling to the man, and I never looked at his pale, keen face, or the poise of his head, without associating him with grey archways and mullioned windows, and all the venerable wreckage of a feudal keep. And now and again we drifted into talk, and I can remember that more than once he expressed a keen interest in my methods of observation and inference. For 4 years I had seen nothing of him, until one morning he walked into my room in Montague Street. He had changed little, was dressed like a young man of fashion. He was always a bit of a dandy, and preserved the same quiet, suave manner which had formerly distinguished him. "How is all gone with you, Musgrave?" I asked, after we had cordially shaken hands. Well, you have probably heard of my father's death, said he. He was carried off about 2 years ago. Since then I have, of course, had the Hurlstone estates to manage, and as I am member for the district as well, my life has been a busy one. But I understand, Holmes, that you are turning to practical ends those powers with which you used to amaze us. Yes, said I. I have taken to living by my wits. Oh, I'm delighted to hear it, for your advice at present would be exceedingly valuable to me. We have had some very strange doings at Hurlstone, and the police have been able to throw no light upon the matter. It is really the most extraordinary and inexplicable business. You can imagine with what eagerness I listened to him, Watson, for the very chance for which I had been panting during all those months of inaction seemed to have come within my reach. In my inmost heart I believed that I could succeed where others had failed, and now I had the opportunity to test myself. Pray, let me have the details, I cried. Reginald Musgrave sat down opposite me and lit the cigarette which I had pushed towards him. You must know, said he, that though I am a bachelor, I have to keep up a considerable staff of servants at Hurlstone, for it is a rambling old place, and takes a good deal of looking after. I preserve, too, and in the pheasant months I usually have a house party, so that it would not do to be short-handed. Altogether there are 8 maids, the cook, the butler, 2 footmen, and a boy. The garden and the stables, of course, have separate staff. Of these servants, the one who had been longest in our service was Brunton, the butler. He was a young schoolmaster, out of place, when he had first taken up with my father, but he was a man of great energy and character, and he soon became quite invaluable in the household. He was a well-grown, handsome man, with a splendid forehead. And though he has been with us for 20 years, he cannot be more than 40 now. With his personal advantages and his extraordinary gifts, for he can speak several languages and play nearly every musical instrument. It is wonderful that he should have been satisfied so long in such a position. But I suppose he was comfortable and lacked energy to make any change. The butler of Hurlstone is always a thing that is remembered by all who visit us. Oh, this dandy seems to have strong feelings about this butler. Hi, Much Bobcat. Hello. I don't know what makes a forehead splendid. Hi, JC. You made it. Yay. And also, I don't know what would have made a splendid forehead at this time, because there have been times where a forehead is a big deal, but at certain eras it's better to have a huge one. Certain eras it's better to not have it. Who knows? Who knows? Okay. But this paragon has one fault. He is a bit of a Don Juan, and you can imagine that for a man like him, it is not a very difficult part to play in a quiet country district. When he was married, it was all right, but since he has been a widower, we have no end of trouble with him. A few months ago, we were in hopes that he was about to settle down again, for he became engaged to Rachel Howells, our second housemaid, but he has thrown her over since then and taken up with Janet Tregellis, the daughter of the head gamekeeper. Rachel, who is a very good girl, but of an excitable Welsh temperament, had a sharp touch of brain fever, and goes about the house now, or did until yesterday, like a black-eyed shadow of her former self. That was our first drama at Hurlstone, but a second one came to drive it from our minds, and it was prefaced by the disgrace and dismissal of Butler Brunton. AWACS 2, hi. This is how it came about. I've said that the man was intelligent, and this very intelligence has caused his ruin, for it seems to have led to an insatiable curiosity about things which did not in the least concern him. I had no idea of the lengths to which this would carry him until the merest accident opened my eyes to it. I have said that the house is a rambling one. One night last week, on Thursday night, to be more exact, I found that I could not sleep, having foolishly taken a cup of strong café noir after my dinner. After struggling against it until 2 in the morning, I felt that it was quite hopeless, so I rose and lit the candle, with the intention of continuing a novel which I was reading. The book, however, had been left in the billiard room, so I pulled on my dressing gown and started off to get it. This poor rich man. In order to reach the billiard room, I had to descend a flight of stairs, and then cross the head of the passage which led to the library and the gun room. You can imagine my surprise when, as I looked down this corridor, I saw a glimmer of light coming from the open door of the library. I had myself extinguished the lamp and closed the door before coming to bed. Naturally, my first thought was of burglars. The corridors at Hurlston have their walls largely decorated with trophies of old weapons. From one of these, I picked a battle axe. And then, leaving my candle behind me, I crept on tiptoe down the passage and peeped in at the open door. Just grabs a fucking battle axe off the walls. Gotta go catch a flight. Okay, banana. Hope you have a safe trip. That's awesome. Okay. Brunton, the butler, was in the library. He was sitting fully dressed in an easy chair with a slip of paper which looked like a map upon his knee, and his forehead sunk forward upon his hand in deep thought. I want to take a moment to just note, when they say fully dressed, they don't mean like as opposed to naked. They mean he's like fully in his day wear as opposed to like a house coat or sleepwear. So he has not gotten ready for bed yet. Suddenly, as I looked, he rose from his chair and, walking over to a bureau at the side, he unlocked it and drew out one of the drawers. From this he took a paper and, returning to his seat, he flattened it out beside the taper on the edge of the table and began to study it with minute attention. My indignation at this calm examination of our family documents overcame me so far that I took a step forward, and Brunton, looking up, saw me standing in the doorway. He sprang to his feet. His face turned livid with fear, and he thrust into his breast the chart-like paper which he had been originally studying. "So," said I, "this is how you repay the trust which we have reposed in you. You will leave my service tomorrow." He bowed with the look of a man who is utterly crushed, and slunk past me without a word. The taper was still on the table, and by its light I glanced to see what the paper was which Brunton had taken from the bureau. To my surprise, it was nothing of any importance at all, but simply a copy of the questions and answers in the singular old observance called the Musgrave Ritual. It is a sort of ceremony peculiar to our family, which each Musgrave for centuries has gone through upon his coming of age. A thing of private interest, and perhaps of some little importance to the archaeologist, like our own blazonings and charges, but with no practical use whatever. "We'd better come back to the paper afterwards," said I. "If you think it's really necessary," he answered, with some hesitation. To continue my statement, however, I relocked the bureau, using the key which Brunton had left, and I had turned to go when I was surprised to find that the butler had returned. and was standing before me. "Mr. Musgrave, sir," he cried in a voice which was hoarse with emotion. "Oh, I can't bear a disgrace, sir. I've always been proud, above my station in life, and disgrace would kill me. My blood will be on your head, sir. It will indeed, if you drive me to despair. If you cannot keep me after what is past, then, for God's sake, let me give you notice and leave in a month, as if of my own free will. I could stand that, Mr. Musgrave, but not to be cast out before all the folk that I know so well." "You don't deserve so much consideration, Brunton," I answered. "Your conduct has been most infamous. However, as you've been a long time in the family, I have no wish to bring public disgrace upon you. A month, however, is too long. Take yourself away in a week, and give what reason you like for going." "Only a week, sir," he cried in a despairing voice. "A fortnight. Say at least a fortnight." "A week," I repeated, "and you may consider yourself to have been very leniently dealt with." He crept away, his face sunk upon his breast like a broken man, while I put out the light and returned to my room. For 2 days after this, Brunton was most assiduous in his attention to his duties. I made no allusion to what had passed, and waited with some curiosity to see how he would cover his disguise. On the 3rd morning, however, he did not appear, as was his custom, after breakfast, to receive my instructions for the day. As I left the dining room, I happened to meet Rachel Howells, the maid. I've told you that she had only recently recovered from an illness, and was looking so wretchedly pale and wan that I remonstrated with her for being at work. "Gabriel, welcome in. Thank you for the follow." "Oh, welcome back, Red Boy." "You should be in bed," I said. "Come back to your duties when you are stronger." She looked at me with so strange an expression that I began to suspect that her brain was affected. "Oh, I am strong enough, Mr. Musgrave," said she. "We will see what the doctor says," I answered. "You must stop work now, and when you go downstairs just say that I wish to see Brunton." "Oh, the butler is gone," said she. "Gone? Gone where?" "Oh, he's gone. No one has seen him. Oh, he's not in his room. Oh, yes, he is gone. He is gone." She fell back against the wall with a shriek after shriek of laughter, while I, horrified at this sudden hysterical attack, rushed to the bell to summon help. The girl was taken to her room, still screaming and sobbing, while I made inquiries about Brunton, and there was no doubt about it that he had disappeared. His bed had not been slept in. He had been seen by no one since he had retired to his room the night before, and it was difficult to see how he could have left the house, as both windows and doors were found to be fastened in the morning. His clothes, his watch, and even his money were in his room, but the black suit which he usually wore was missing. His slippers, too, were gone, but his boots were left behind. Where, then, could Butler Brunton have gone in the night? And what could have become of him now? But of course we searched the room from cellar to garret, but there was no trace of him. It is, as I have said, a labyrinth of an old house, especially the original wing, which is now practically uninhabited. But we ransacked every room and attic without discovering the least sign of the missing man. It was incredible to me that he could have gone away, leaving all his property behind him. And yet, where could he be? I called in the local police, but without success. Rain had fallen on the night before, and we examined the lawn and the paths all round the house, but in vain. Matters were in this state where a new development quite drew our attention away from the original mystery. Sense a secret passageway. Yup. Do you see what I mean, though? That, like, a character will just monologue? And I eventually, like, what I came to through reading Sherlock stories is that I'll just give them all their own voices. Technically, all of this should be in Holmes's voice. Holmes is relating all of this to Watson, but in the form of just like relating the dialogue the way that, wait, what's this dude's name? Musgrave, right? And then when Musgrave is telling him about like Brunton or the maid, do you know what I mean? When Holmes heard that from Musgrave, that would have all been in Musgrave's voice. This should all be in Holmes's voice, but I just find that it's too difficult to follow, particularly if you're just hearing it as opposed to reading it up. I mean, obviously if you're reading it off the page, it's more clear, but... Is he a reliable narrator? Who, Holmes or Musgrave? Holmes does all the voices for Watson. He might use his hand puppet. Well, I don't know about that, but I wouldn't doubt that he puts on like a affectation. You think Holmes isn't a reliable narrator? Potentially. Potentially. But then also, this should all be in Watson's voice, because this is all what Watson has written down. Do you know what I mean? This isn't even a scene where Holmes and Watson are sitting together talking. This is the writing that Watson supposedly wrote down after having this conversation with Holmes. Old books, man. Layers. And not necessarily in a good way. Okay. For 2 days, Rachel Howells had been so ill, sometimes delirious, sometimes hysterical, that a nurse had been employed to sit up with her at night. On the 3rd night after Brunton's disappearance, the nurse, finding her patient sleeping nicely, had dropped into a nap in the armchair when she woke in the early morning to find the bed empty, the window open, and no signs of the invalid. I was instantly aroused. Nim, that line's not about you. She's telling you to leave her alone. Nimbus, go do your own thing. There you go. Good girl. I was instantly aroused, and with the 2 footmen started off at once in search of the missing girl. It was not difficult to tell the direction which she had taken, for starting from under her window, we could follow her footmarks easily across the lawn to the edge of the mere, where they vanished, close to the gravel path which leads out of the grounds. The lake there, oh no, is 8 feet deep. You can imagine our feelings when we saw that the trail of the poor, demented girl came to an end at the edge of it. Of course, we had the drags at once and set to work to recover the remains, but no trace of the body could we find. On the other hand, we brought to the surface an object of a most unexpected kind. It was a linen bag, which contained within it a mass of old rusted and discolored metal and several dull-colored pieces of pebble or glass. This strange find was all that we could get from the mere, and although we made every possible search and inquiry yesterday, we know nothing of the fate either of Rachel Howells or Richard Brunton. And the county police are at their wits' end, and I have come up to you as a last resource. Now, you can imagine, Watson, with what eagerness I listened to this extraordinary sequence of events, and endeavoured to piece them together, and to devise some common thread upon which they might all hang. The butler was gone, the maid was gone. The maid had loved the butler, but had afterwards had cause to hate him, as she was of Welsh blood, fiery and passionate. She had been terribly excited immediately after his disappearance. She had flung into the lake a bag containing some curious contents. These were all factors which had to be taken into consideration, and yet none of them got quite to the heart of the matter. What was the starting point of this chain of events? There lay the end of this tangled line. "I must see that paper, Musgrave," said I, "which this butler of yours thought it worth his while to consult, even at the risk of the loss of his place." "It is a rather absurd business, this ritual of ours," he answered, "but it has at least the saving grace of antiquity to excuse it. I have a copy of the questions and answers here, if you care to run your eye over them." He handed me the very paper which I have here, Watson, and this is the strange catechism to which each Musgrave had to submit when he came to man's estate. I will read you the questions and answers as they stand. Whose was it? His who is gone. Who shall have it? He who will come. What was the month? The 6th from the 1st. Where was the sun? Over the oak. Where was the shadow? Under the elm. How was it stepped? North by 10 and by 10, east by 5 and by 5, south by 2 and by 2, west by 1 and by 1, and so under. What shall we give for it? All that is ours. Why should we give it? For the sake of the trust. The original has no date, but it is the spelling of the middle of the... No, but it is in the spelling of the middle of the 17th century, remarked Musgrave. I'm afraid, however, that they can be of little help to you in solving this mystery. Well, at least, said I, it gives us another mystery, and one which is even more interesting than the first. It may be that the solution of the one may prove to be the solution of the other. You will excuse me, Musgrave, if I say that your butler appears to me to have been a very clever man, and to have had a clearer insight than 10 generations of his masters. I hardly follow you, said Musgrave. The paper seems to me of no practical importance. Oh, but to me it seems immensely practical, and I fancy that Brunton took the same view. He had probably seen it before that night on which you got him. It is very possible. We took no pains to hide it. Well, he simply wished, I should imagine, to refresh his memory upon that last occasion. He had, as I understand, some sort of map or chart which he was comparing with the manuscript, and which he thrust into his pocket when you appeared. That is true, but what could he have to do with this old family custom of ours? And what does this rigmarole mean? I don't think we should have much difficulty in determining that, said I. With your permission, we will take the first train down to Sussex, go a little more deeply into the matter upon the spot. I just want to look up a couple of the end notes for this. All right. The end notes really should just be like informative, and most of them are, but there's one that's like the editor just puts an opinion in here. Sorry, it's when Musgrave dismisses him and says, "You will leave my service tomorrow," the editor has put in as an end note, a trifle harsh, one would suggest. Bro, that's not the job of the endnotes. This isn't your opinion piece. I agree. It's very harsh. I agree with that. But that's, okay. It says, for the line from that, those questions, what was the month, the 6th from the 1st? There's an endnote that says, when the story was first published in the Strand, this couplet was missing. It was inserted for the book version in Britain, but omitted for most American book versions. As for the 6th month from the 1st, the ritual was drawn up in the 17th century. Oh, when the ritual was drawn up in the 17th century, the year started on the 25th of March. This was changed in 1752, when the Gregorian calendar was adopted in England, resulting in 11 days being skipped. Interesting. Very interesting. Cool. Yeah, can you imagine just changing the entire calendar? That's wild. And we're all stressing about, like, whether to get rid of, like, daylight savings time. Oh my goodness, Emmy Steve over on YouTube. Thanks for the sub over on YouTube. Welcome. Okay. The same afternoon saw us both at Hurlston. Possibly you've seen pictures and read descriptions of the famous old building, so I will confine my account of it to saying that it is built in the shape of an L, the long arm being the more modern portion, and the shorter the ancient nucleus from which the other has developed. Over the low, heavy lintel door, in the centre of this old part, is chiselled the date 1607, but experts are agreed that the beams and stonework are really much older than this, and the enormously thick walls and tiny windows of this part had, in the last century, driven the family into building the new wing, and the old one was used now as a storehouse and a cellar, when it was used at all. A splendid park with fine old timber surrounded the house, and the lake, to which my client had referred, lay close to the avenue, about 200 yards from the building. I was already firmly convinced, Watson, that there were not 3 separate mysteries here, but only one, and that if I could read the Musgrave ritual aright, I should hold in my hand the clue which would lead me to the truth concerning both the butler, Brunton, and the maid, Howells. To that, then, I turned all my energies. Why should this servant be so anxious to master this old formula? Evidently because he saw something in it which had escaped all those generations of country squires, and from which he expected some personal advantage. What was it, then? And how had it affected his fate? I mean, like, if I read this, I would think that it was instructions to find something. Like, am I weird for thinking that it's really obvious that this is obviously, like, directions? Like, yeah, they need to be, like, interpreted a little, but it's very clearly directions, right? It's super, okay. Yofis, thank you for the follow. Hello, welcome in. People were dumb back then. I don't know, maybe it's just, like, if you're raised by it and, like, you're aware of it since you were a little kid and your parents are like, no, it's this dumb thing, then you grow up thinking it's a dumb thing, and then you tell your kids that it's a dumb thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, it could have been that, like, one of the past generations was like, we need to, like, make people think that this is just dumb. You know, do you know what I mean? You're weird for a lot of reasons. I lost count. Fidge. Alright. Okay. You blame the inbreeding. of like the whole, like, strange rituals and things. Like, I think it's cool. I just think it's like, how did generations not understand that there's obviously instructions? Hi, Deluxe. Hello, hello. How you doing? All right. I was already firmly convinced, Watson, that there were not... Oh, I already read that, sorry. It was perfectly obvious to me, on reading the ritual, that the measurements must refer to some spot to which the rest of the document alluded, and that if we could find the spot, we should be in a fair way towards knowing what the secret was which the old Musgraves had thought it necessary to embalm in so curious a fashion. And there were 2 guides given us to start with, an oak and an elm. As to the oak, there could be no question at all. Right in front of the house, upon the left-hand side of the drive, there stood a patriarch among oaks, one of the most magnificent trees that I have ever seen. That was there when your ritual was drawn up? Said I, as we drove past it. It was there at the Norman Conquest, in all probability, he answered. It has a girth of 23 feet. Here was one of my fixed points secured. Have you any old elms? I asked. There used to be a very old one over yonder, but it was struck by lightning 10 years ago. We cut down the stump. You can see where it used to be? Oh, yes. There are no other elms. No old ones, but plenty of beeches. I should like to see where it grew. We had driven up in a dog cart, and my client led me away at once, without our entering the house, to the scar on the lawn where the elm had stood. I was nearly midway between the oak and the house. My investigation seemed to be progressing. I suppose it is impossible to find out how high the elm was? I asked. I can give it to you at once. It was 64 feet. Well, how do you come to know it? I asked in surprise. When my old tutor used to give me an exercise in trigonometry, it always took the shape of measuring heights. When I was a lad, I worked out every tree and building on the estate. That's the kind of shit you remember when you don't have the internet. And your brain isn't crammed with new information every day. Does anyone else used to have, like, all the phone numbers of everyone they knew? You used to have them memorized? I don't have a single phone number memorized anymore. I used to have them all memorized. Yeah. Our poor brains. Ugh. Okay. All right. You had a watch with a calculator on it? Wait, that's so cute. I still have my old landline that doesn't exist anymore. I still have that number memorized. Not the height of a single tree in your brain anymore. Lost without your contact. Right? I've thought before, I'm like, what if I was, like, stranded somewhere and my phone was dead and I need to contact, like, anyone? Anyone. I don't know any of their numbers. I should really memorize, like, at least one person's number. Okay. This was an unexpected piece of luck. My data were coming more quickly than I could have reasonably hoped. Tell me, I asked, did your butler ever ask you such a question? Reginald Musgrave looked at me in astonishment. Now that you call it to my mind, he answered, Brunton did ask me about the height of the tree some months ago, in connection with some little argument with the groom. This was excellent news, Watson, for it showed me that I was on the right road. I looked up at the sun. It was low in the heavens, and I calculated that in less than an hour it would lie just above the topmost branches of the old oak. One condition mentioned in the ritual would then be fulfilled, and the shadow of the elm must mean the farther end of the shadow, and otherwise the trunk would have been chosen as the guide. I had then defined where the far end of the shadow would fall when the sun was just clear of the oak. That must have been difficult, Holmes, when the elm was no longer there. Well, at least I knew that if Brunton could do it, I could also. Besides, there was no real difficulty. I went with Musgrave to his study and whittled myself this peg, to which I tied this long string, with a knot at each yard. And then I took 2 lengths of a fishing rod, which came to just 6 feet, and I went back with my client to where the elm had been, when the sun was just grazing the top of the oak. I fastened the rod on end, marked out the direction of the shadow, and measured it. It was 9 feet in length. Okay, sorry, checking the note. Of course, the calculation was now a simple one. If a rod of 6 feet threw a shadow of 9 feet, a tree of 64 feet would throw one of 96 feet, and the line of one would of course be the line of the other. I measured out the distance, which brought me almost to the wall of the house, and I thrust a peg into the spot. You can examine my exultation, Watson, when within 2 inches of my peg I saw a conical depression in the ground. I knew that it was the mark made by Brunton in his measurements, and that I was still upon his trail. Now, from this starting point, I proceeded to step, having first taken the cardinal points by my pocket compass. 10 steps with each foot took me along parallel with the wall of the house, and again I marked my spot with a peg. Then I carefully paced off 5 to the east and 2 to the south. It brought me to the very threshold of the old door. 2 steps to the west meant now that I was to go 2 paces down the stone-flagged passage, and this was the place indicated by the ritual. Never have I felt such a cold chill of disappointment, Watson. For a moment it seemed to me that there must be some radical mistake in my calculations. The setting sun shone full upon the passage floor, and I could see that the old foot-worn grey stones with which it was paved were firmly cemented together, and had certainly not been moved for many a long year. Brunton had not been at work here. I tapped upon the floor, but it sounded the same all over, and there was no sign of any crack or crevice. But fortunately, Musgrave, who had begun to appreciate the meaning of my proceedings, and who was now as excited as myself, took out his manuscript to check my calculations. "And under," he cried. "You have omitted the 'and under.'" Well, I had thought that it meant we were to dig, but now, of course, I saw at once that I was wrong. "There is a cellar under this, then?" I cried. "Yes, and as old as the house, down here, through this door." We went down a winding stone stair, and my companion, striking a match, lit a large lantern which stood on a barrel in the corner. In an instant it was obvious that we had, at last, come upon the true place, and that we had not been the only people to visit the spot recently. It had been used for the storage of wood, but the billets, which had evidently been littered over the floor, were now piled at the sides, so as to leave a clear space in the middle. In this space lay a large and heavy flagstone with a rusted iron ring in the center, to which a thick shepherd's check muffler was attached. "By Jove!" cried my client. "That's Brunton's muffler. I've seen it on him, and could swear to it. What has the villain been doing here?" At my suggestion, a couple of the county police were summoned to be present, and I then endeavored to raise the stone by pulling on the cravat. I could only move it slightly, and it was with the aid of one of the constables that I succeeded at last in carrying it to one side. A black hole yawned beneath, into which we all peered, while Musgrave, kneeling at the side, pushed down the lantern. A small chamber, about 7 feet deep and 4 feet square, lay open to us. At one side of this was a squat, brass-bound wooden box, the lid of which was hinged upwards, with this curious, old-fashioned key projecting from the lock. It was furred outside by a thick layer of dust, and damp and worms had eaten through the wood, so that a crop of living fungi was growing on the inside of it. Several discs of metal, old coins apparently, such as I hold here, were scattered over the bottom of the box, but it contained nothing else. At the moment, however, we had no thought for the old chest, for our eyes were riveted upon that which crouched beside it. It was the figure of a man, clad in a suit of black, who squatted down upon his hams with his forehead sunk upon the edge of the box and his 2 arms thrown out on each side of it. Raiders, hello, welcome in, Raiders. Hi, bunny vibes. Thank you so much for the raid. Welcome. Hello, everyone. Hello. You guys, make sure you're following Bunny Vibes. She is so freaking awesome. She's so good at ASMR, so cozy. There's just like this kind, caring energy over there. Kamagoy, am I saying that right? Thank you for the follow. Hello. Hi, Matt Max. Hi, Hassel Hoffman. She is so freaking awesome. Agreed. Hi, Hank. Hi, Milu. Hello. Hi, Elijah. Bunny, how was your stream tonight? Also, hello everyone. If you are new here, I'm Faolkor, and we do a mixture here of soft-spoken ASMR and also reading content. So we are currently reading a Sherlock Holmes story. Let me show. Thank you. Yep, I have a merch collection. This shirt is specifically is not up on the shop because it's a new like design fabric that I'm just testing out for quality purposes, but this design is on other things over there. So happy 2026 to you too, Elijah. Story times are so good. Wax too, thank you. When I talk wordy to women, they get bored. Nah. Talking wordy's good. As long as, like, is back and forth. It doesn't, pay attention, it doesn't say talk wordy at me. Okay? That's different. Don't talk wordy at me. Happy New Year, Bunny. Hello. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're reading the Musgrave Ritual, which I've never read before. It's a fun one. It's not too, like, so far it's just kind of like a fun mystery. Some of them get darker. But yeah. Feel free to get cozy if you feel like some story time. I feel like we're kind of getting closer to the end of the story. Yeah, we might read another one after that, and then after that, we'll probably do some like dedicated ASMR triggers. So, yeah, feel free to get cozy. And Bunny, thank you again so much for bringing your lovely community over, and please feel free to hang out or pop out, whichever you need to do, as long as you're taking care of yourself after your own stream. You guys, make sure you are following Bunny Vibes. You will not regret it. And yeah, Happy New Year, everyone. Okay, Elijah, that sounds good. That sounds good. And also, just as we've got like some new people in here, just a reminder, we are also streaming this. We're dual streaming on YouTube right now. In the first of those links is the one that we're live on right now. It's the reading channel. And if any of you, feel like watching over there, that does help with the watch hour. Is one of my 2026 hopes, goals, is to unlock monetization on YouTube, and that's one of the things that helps with that. But also, no pressure, hang out wherever you want. It's all good. It's all good, just letting you guys know. All right, so they have found this secret little cellar, which, like, I'm sorry, but like, this storeroom has been used, right? The storeroom they went to, where the directions, the treasure map led to, said they'd stored like wood and such in there, and there's a huge fucking flagstone in the middle of the floor with a huge iron ring on it, and not one person was like, I wonder what's under that. In hundreds of years, over hundreds of years, not one of the, like, regardless of the freaking clues in the fancy little rhyme, not one of the servants bringing piles of wood into the cellar was like, that looks like that lifts up. Like, Happy New Year, Hassel. Have a good night. Good to see you. And Matt, thank you for the 7 stream streak. Thank you, thank you. Hi, Wedgie time. And Swim. Oh, I frogged. A frog said hello. Swim, thanks for hanging out on the YouTube side as well. In multiple dragon dens, heck yeah. I'm doing alright, Wedgie. Okay, so they open the flagstone. There's a dark little room. They light the lantern. There's a box. Got some coins in it, but nothing that crazy. Is this where Black Dragon Tavern raided earlier? Yes! You got left. No, you didn't. You said hello when they raided in, Milu. You said hello. Didn't you? Or did you not? They did raid in here earlier. No, you didn't? Okay. Really? That's so weird. I feel like I have a memory of that happening. Oh well. I'm glad you're here. Glad you wound up here eventually. Okay. Okay, so this is, just for a little bit of context, Sherlock Holmes and Watson are sitting around, and Sherlock doesn't want to clean up his mess, which is very relatable, and so he's like, oh, but Watson, instead of cleaning, I could tell you a story about one of my first cases. And Watson's like, well, I can't resist that. Okay, bunny. Sounds good. Thank you, thank you. That's where they kept the former servants that asked too many questions. Jesus. You knew I would stream later than Bunny streamed there. Oh, okay. Fair enough. Okay. So this is, Sherlock Holmes is telling this story to Watson about a case when he was much younger, helping a very rich friend of his who he had met at university. That's what's going on. Waddy, what? Are you saying what I think you're saying? Because there's definitely TMI, and not at all the place for this. Can we do something about that? Oh, please. That's not at all appropriate. Like, for humans. All my mods are asleep. Okay. You're trying to Fidge. Fidge is scrambling. I'm sorry, Fidge. You're good. You're all good. Just, you know. Yeah, it's all good. Okay. At that moment, however, we had no thought for the old chest, for our eyes were riveted upon that which crouched beside it. It was the figure of a man, clad in a suit of black, who squatted down upon his hams with his squatted on his hams is so funny to me. I'm sorry. No, that's not supposed to be a funny sentence. Can we, like, thank you, Fidge. Thank you. Who squatted down upon his hams with his forehead sunk upon the edge of the box and his two arms thrown out on each side of it. The attitude had drawn all the stagnant blood to his face, and no man could have recognized that distorted, liver-colored countenance. But his height, his dress, and his hair were all sufficient to show my client, when we had drawn the body up, that it was indeed the missing butler. He had been dead some days, but there was no wound or bruise upon his person to show how he had met his dreadful end. When his body had been carried from the cellar, we found ourselves still confronted with a problem which was almost as formidable as that with which we had started. I confess that so far, Watson, I'd been disappointed in my investigation. Well, I had reckoned upon solving the matter when once I had found the place referred to in the ritual. But now I was there, and was apparently as far from ever knowing what it was which the family had concealed with such elaborate precautions. It is true that I had thrown a light upon the fate of Brunton, but now I had to ascertain how that fate had come upon him, and what part had been played in the matter by the woman who had disappeared. I sat down upon a keg in the corner and thought the whole matter over carefully. Oh no, Fidge, I'm sorry. Oh, you know my methods in such cases, Watson. I put myself in the man's place, and having first gauged his intelligence, I try to imagine how I should myself have proceeded under the same circumstances. In this case, the matter was simplified by Brunton's intelligence being quite first-rate, so that it was unnecessary to make any allowance for personal equation, as the astronomers have dubbed it. Personal equation, as the astronomers have dubbed it? Was that, I guess, something astronomers dubbed? Well, he knew that something valuable was concealed. He had spotted the place. He found that the stone which covered it was just too heavy for a man to move unaided. What would he do next? He could not get help from outside, even if he had someone whom he could trust, without the unbarring of doors and considerable risk of detection. It was better, if he could, to have his helpmate inside the house. But whom could he ask? Well, this girl had been devoted to him. A man always finds it hard to realize that he may have finally lost a woman's love, however badly he may have treated her. He would try, by a few attentions, to make his peace with the girl Howells, and then would engage her as his accomplice. Together they would come at night to the cellar, and their united force would suffice to raise the stone. So far I could follow their actions as if I had actually seen them. Hi, Dot. Happy New Year. Leo. Hello, Leo. Hello. And also, welcome, Gorilla Glue Loco. Thank you for the follow. Okay. But for the two of them, and one a woman, must have been heavy work, that raising of the stone. A burly Sussex policeman and I had found it no light job. What would they do to assist them? Probably what I should have done myself. I rose and examined carefully the different billets of wood which were scattered round the floor. Almost at once I came upon what I expected. One piece, about 3 feet in length, had a marked indentation at one end, while several were flattened at the sides, as if they had been compressed by some considerable weight. Evidently, as they had dragged the stone up, they had thrust the chunks of wood into the chink, until at last, when the opening was large enough to crawl through, they would hold it open by a billet placed lengthwise, which might very well become indented at the lower end, since the whole weight of the stone would press it down to the edge of the other slab. So far, I was still on safe ground. I just joined Twitch, and you're our first amazing streamer I see. Your voice is so soothing. I'm about to sleep like a dog. Oh my goodness, Leo. Well, thank you very much. I'm so glad you're enjoying it, and I hope you have a wonderful sleep. Welcome to Twitch, and welcome to the channel. Very nice to meet you. And now, how was I to proceed to reconstruct this midnight drama? Clearly only one could get into the hole, and that one was Brunton. Oh, Leo, thank you for the follow. Hi, M. Horn. We have read The Adventure of the Silver Blaze. Yes. Yep. The stories that we've read, if you look at the Read on Stream channel in the Discord, I do list the Sherlock stories that we've read along the way. Rusty, thank you for the follow. Welcome. Okay. The girl must have waited above. Brunton then unlocked the box, handed up the contents, presumably, since they were not to be found, and then what happened? What smoldering fire of vengeance had suddenly sprung into flame in this passionate Celtic woman's soul? I'm sorry, he's making such a big deal out of her being Welsh. He's like, well, no wonder she was crazy. She's Welsh. Well, no wonder she's passionate. She's Welsh. This inflamed Celtic woman. Wait, hey Will, thank you for gifting a sub to Leo. Thank you very much. Leo, I hope you enjoy all of the emotes. And Sinchobi, thank you for the resub. Yeah, that's a year now. Sinchobi, 12 months now. Thank you. How are you doing? Happy New Year. Oh, sorry, the book command is not updated. We are reading a story called The Musgrave Ritual from the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. Sorry. Almost always that book command will be updated, but I'm not even reading from Project Gutenberg. I've just got this volume I'm reading from. But sorry, I should have updated that. Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. I wrote Sherlock Holes. Okay, and now let's just pin that. I know it's not a link, I'm sorry. I usually have a link, but at least it answers the question. Okay. Let's see. There's only a couple pages left of this story. Okay. Once smoldering fire of vengeance had suddenly sprung into flame in this passionate Celtic woman's soul when she saw the man who had wronged her perhaps far more than we suspected, in her power. Was it a chance that the wood had slipped, and that the stone had shut Brunton into what had become his sepulchre? Had she only been guilty of silence as to his fate, or had some sudden blow from her hand dashed the support away and sent the slab crashing down into its place? Be that as it might, I seemed to see that woman's figure still clutching at her treasure trove and flying wildly up the winding stair with her ears ringing, perhaps with the muffled screams from behind her, and with the drumming of frenzied hands against the slab of stone which was choking her faithless lover's life out. Here was the secret of her blanched face, her shaken nerves, her peals of hysterical laughter on the next morning. But what had been in the box? What had she done with that? Of course, it must have been the old metal and pebbles which my client had dragged from the mere. She had thrown them in there at the first opportunity to remove the last trace of her crime. For 20 minutes I had sat motionless, thinking the matter out. Musgrave stood still with a very pale face, swinging his lantern and peering down into the hole. "These are coins of Charles I," said he, holding out the few which had been left in the box. "You see, we were right in fixing our date for the ritual." "We may find something else of Charles I," I cried, as the probable meaning of the first two questions of the ritual broke suddenly upon me. "Let me see the contents of the bag you fished from the mere." I want to remember the first two questions. Okay, the first two questions are, whose was it? And the answer is, his who is gone. And then the next question is, who shall have it? And the answer is, he who will come. This brings back memories when we would follow along with the teacher and we all had our own books. I was definitely scared when she asked questions. Okay, so usually I have a link in chat so that people can download a version and read along with me. And we're going to be starting to read the Odyssey on Sunday, and I will make sure to have a link for people to read along. Oh, thank you, Finch. Yeah, I will pin that. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. 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 We ascended to his study, and he laid the debris before me. I could understand his regarding it as small importance when I looked at it, for the metal was almost black, and the stones lusterless and dull. I rubbed one of them on my sleeve, however, and it glowed afterwards, like a spark, in the dark hollow of my hand. The metalwork was in the form of a double ring, but it had been bent and twisted out of its original shape. "You must bear in mind," said I, "that the royal party made headway in England even after the death of the king, and that when they at last fled, they probably left many of their most precious possessions buried behind them, with the intention of returning for them in more peaceful times." Mauricio and Drazen, thank you for the follows. Welcome in. Welcome. My ancestor, Sir Ralph Musgrave, was a prominent cavalier and the right-hand man of Charles II on his wanderings, said my friend, Indeed, I answered. Well now, I think that really should give us the last link that we wanted. I must congratulate you on coming into possession, though in rather a tragic manner, of a relic which is of great intrinsic value, but of even greater importance as an historical curiosity. What is it then? He gasped in astonishment. It is nothing less than the ancient crown of the kings of England. The crown? Precisely. Well, consider what the ritual says. How does it run? Whose was it? His who is gone. That was after the execution of Charles. Then who shall have it? He who will come. That was Charles II, whose advent was already foreseen. There can, I think, be no doubt that this battered and shapeless diadem once encircled the brows of the royal stewards. And how came it in the pond? Well, that is a question which will take some time to answer. And with that I sketched out the whole long chain of surmise and of proof which I had constructed. And the twilight had closed in, and the moon was shining brightly in the sky before my narrative was finished. And how was it, then, that Charles did not get his crown when he returned? Asked Musgrave, pushing back the relic into its linen bag. Ah, there you lay your finger upon the one point which we shall probably never be able to clear up. It is likely that the Musgrave who held the secret died in the interval, and by some oversight left this guide to his descendant without explaining the meaning of it. From that day to this, it has been handed down from father to son, until at last it came within reach of a man who tore its secret out of it, and lost his life in the venture. And that's the story of the Musgrave ritual, Watson. They have the crown down at Hurlston, though they have some legal bother and a considerable sum to pay before they were allowed to retain it. Well, I'm sure that if you mention my name, they would be happy to show it to you. The woman, nothing was ever heard, and the probability is that she got away out of England and carried herself and the memory of her crime to some land beyond the seas. End of story. If I can hear this voice every night before going to sleep, I'll be so lucky. Oh, Leo, that's so sweet. Well, I go live usually 3 nights a week to read, sometimes 4. But I am also working on, so I've been reading on Twitch for over 3 years now, but I only started YouTube in November. And so I am dual streaming. I'm also live on YouTube right now, but also I'm working on, because I have like the downloaded VODs on a hard drive of most of the books that I've read on Twitch, and I'm working on editing them and getting them up on the YouTube. So if you're looking for more to listen to, that first YouTube link in chat, that is the book reading YouTube. The other one is for more traditional ASMR triggers. But yes, there will be, there's 2 full edited books. So basically when I edit, I'm just taking out all of this kind of stuff, the chit chat, making it more just like an audiobook. We've just got Carmilla and Christmas Carol up now, but there will be more coming up very shortly. So yeah. What are you guys talking about? What do you mean? I barely scold people. That was a good story. It was a bit like I don't know. It felt a bit more obvious. But it was also supposed to be one of like the first cases that he did, so maybe that's appropriate. You can hear a great horned owl hooting outside while Val brings these stories to life. Magical start to the new year. That's so nice. I love that. Hi, Emorn, starting out nice and slow for the new year. That's a good idea. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Did the Peaks have a good new year? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're doing well. Nim is loving that treat log. Oh, the camera. This camera keeps bugging out. She's not actually twitching. That's just the camera. She's just eating away. What am I drinking? It's just flavored water. I just really enjoy the hand feel of a goblet. Well, what do you guys think? Should we read one more story? I think probably not two more. Should we read one more before we do, like, some dedicated ASMR? The Murder at the Vicarage is public domain as of today. Can we read some Christie soon? Yeah, we were talking about that last night. The book's coming into the public domain. I really want to hop on the Odyssey next, but we can, yeah, we should read some Agatha Christie. Hi, Rusty. Okay, sounds good. Wait, what? The squeegee, what? You thought it was wine? No, nah. If I was just drinking wine every time I stream, that would be a lot of wine. I don't know. Oh, well, thank you for gifting us up to Waxtooth. Thank you. Wait, and also, did I say thank you for the follow to Bonology? If I didn't, welcome and thank you for the follow. Okay. Oof. And GHT Shadia, thank you for the follow. Oh my goodness, look at all these lovelies coming to hang out. Oh gosh, Leo, I don't even know. What kind of books do you like? I mean, our first proper book that we're going to read here in this channel is going to be The Odyssey. And I don't post on social media very often, but I did actually post on Blue Sky and Twitter earlier to say, some achievements we've had, but amongst that was the fact that over 2025 we've read 14 books. That's not including short stories and fairy tales and folklore and such. That's only like complete novels. And that brings us to a total of 62 complete books read on this stream since I started streaming. Which is pretty rad. Every spirit is flavored water. I mean, that's one way to look at it. Start out nice and slow. I'm trying, Elmhorn. I am trying. There's so much to do, but I'm trying to also, yeah, ease into things. Watching paint dry. Hello, welcome in. Hello, hello. Yeah, it varies a little bit every year. Hold on. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Okay, we read 16 in 2024, 14 this year, but it depends on the length of the books, right? Arguably, I shouldn't even count A Kidnapped Santa in 2024, because that's more a short story, but anyway. Yeah. Okay, well, let's read one more. Okay, Mark, have a good night. Sleep well. Sleep well. Okay, what is the next story in here? The Reigate Squires. Let me look up the pronunciation. Reigate. Pronunciation. Okay, it looks like a place name. Town in England. Reigate. Oh. Was I right the first time? Nice. Reigate. The Reigate Squires. Doesn't think. Thank you for the follow. Hello. Let me make another comment in chat that we can pin. May Crash Out still listening to you? That would be awesome. If I'm able to get you to sleep, that makes me very happy. I hope you have a wonderful sleep. Okay. And if you do and you want to finish listening to this later, the VOD will be up on both Twitch and YouTube. So, currently okay. Good night, Leo. The Reigate Squires. All right. And then I'm going to pin this here. And I'm going to unpin the current one on YouTube. And then let me post that also over on YouTube. Duke, you made it to both. Heck yeah. Oh, Fidge. Nice. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Oh, no, I get it, M. Warren. I do try to stop and, like, catch you guys up in terms of plot and such. Please let me know also if you're, like, confused about anything happening in the story or, like, certain words or such. If there's something where I'm like, oh, okay, this particular word means something different, I do tend to pause and kind of translate that. But I also don't know everything. So, also, if you know something that I'm not commenting on, feel free to add it to the conversation in chat. DJ, what? No. Okay. Alright. Let me get my elbow rest back out. Alright. So this story is... You don't want to spam my chat? What do you mean? This story is called The Reigate Squires, and again from the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. It was some time before the health of my friend, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, recovered from the strain caused by his immense exertions in the spring of '87. The whole question of the Netherlands Sumatra Company and of the colossal schemes of Baron Maupertuis is too recent in the minds of the public, and too intimately concerned with politics and finance, to be a fitting subject for this series of sketches. It led, however, in an indirect fashion, to a singular and complex problem, which gave my friend an opportunity of demonstrating the value of a fresh weapon among the many with which he waged his lifelong battle against crime. There is an end note that I want to reference. Baron Maupertuis. Name is based on that of the French mathematician Pierre-Louis Moreau de Maupertuis, who attempted to measure the Earth for Louis XV. His work on genetics inspired H.G. Wells to name the island of Dr. Moreau after him. What? That's a cool little tidbit. We read The Island of Dr. Moreau a while ago on stream. That's cool. Also, I'm realizing whoever wrote, like the editor who compiled these endnotes, is super sassy. I was just looking again. This is sorry. I know we just started a new story. This is a endnote for the last story that we read. It was on the phrase, "It was the figure of a man," and the editor has said, Musgrave earlier claimed that the whole house had been searched from cellar to garret to find the missing Brunton. Since Musgrave knew this cellar was there, why it had not been searched. But then again, a man as slow-witted as Musgrave, who has had so enticing a document in his possession for years without seeking a solution, would probably overlook unlikely places during a search. Just scathing. Oh my god, that's really funny. Ooh, okay, sorry. I also want to read this footnote about the crown. I'm sorry, I should have read these before starting on the next story, but this is about the crown. Also known as King Alfred's crown, which was worn by James I and Charles I at their coronations. It was listed in an inventory of British regalia in 1649, the year that Charles was executed, as being of gold wire work set with slight stones, and therefore could easily have become misshapen. Gold, spelt G-O-U-L-D, was not an alternative spelling of gold, but was a less valuable metal fashioned to resemble gold, which in the 220 years since Sir Ralph Musgrave had secreted the crown could easily have become tarnished. Well, there you go. All right. Okay, sorry. Now we're going back to the Reigate Squires. I'm sorry, I got very distracted by endnotes there. Yeah, we don't know yet, M. Horn. Yeah, we don't know. What does he I didn't feel like he had anything against the Welsh, just like was really making that a character trait. Like, she's Welsh, and that's why she's like spirited or fiery or whatever. Sorry, I feel like I have a hair in my eye. I thoroughly enjoy your literary archaeology. Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's one of the parts of coming to the live reading as opposed to the edited versions. Yeah. Okay. All right. We're back to the Reigate Squires now. On referring to my notes, I see that it was on the 14th of April that I received a telegram from Lyon, which informed me that Holmes was lying ill in the Hotel du Long. Within 24 hours, I was in his sick room, and was relieved to find that there was nothing formidable in his symptoms. His iron constitution, however, had broken down under the strain of an investigation, which had extended over 2 months, during which period he had never worked less than 15 hours a day, and had, more than once, as he assured me, kept to his task for 5 days at a stretch. The triumphant issue of his labors could not save him from reaction after so terrible an exertion, and at a time when Europe was ringing with his name, and when his room was literally ankle-deep with congratulatory telegrams, I found him a prey to the blackest depression. Even the knowledge that he had succeeded where the police of 3 countries had failed, and that he had outmaneuvered at every point the most accomplished swindler in Europe, was insufficient to rouse him from his nervous prostration. 3 days later, we were back in Baker Street together. But it was evident that my friend would be much the better for a change, and the thought of a week of springtime in the country was full of attractions to me also. My old friend, Colonel Hayter, who had come under my professional care in Afghanistan, had now taken a house near Reigate, in Surrey, and had frequently asked me to come down to him upon a visit. On the last occasion, he had remarked that if my friend would only come with me, he would be glad to extend his hospitality to him also. A little diplomacy was needed, but when Holmes understood that the establishment was a bachelor one, and that he would be allowed the fullest freedom, he fell in with my plans, and a week after our return from Lyon, we were under the Colonel's roof. Hayter was a fine old soldier who had seen much of the world, and he soon found, as I had expected, that Holmes and he had plenty in common. Why did I put an L in that word? Had plenty in common. On the evening of our arrival, we were sitting in the Colonel's gun room after dinner. Holmes stretched upon the sofa, while Hayter and I looked over his little armory of firearms. "By the way," said he suddenly. Okay, just double-checking who he was, the Colonel. "I'll take one of these pistols upstairs with me, in case we have an alarm." "An alarm?" said I. "Yes, we've had a scare in this part lately. Old Acton, who is one of our county magnates, had his house broken into last Monday. No great damage done, but the fellows are still at large." "No clue?" asked Holmes, cocking his eye at the Colonel. "None as yet, but the affair is a petty one, one of our little country crimes, which must seem too small for your attention, Mr. Holmes, after this great international affair." Holmes waved away the compliment, though his smile showed that it had pleased him. "Was there any feature of interest?" "Well, I fancy not. The thieves ransacked the library and got very little for their pains. The whole place was turned upside down, drawers burst open, and presses ransacked, with the result that an odd volume of Pope's Homer, 2 plated candlesticks, an ivory leather weight, a small oak barometer, and a ball of twine are all that have vanished." "What an extraordinary assortment!" I exclaimed. "Oh, the fellows evidently grabbed hold of anything they could get." Holmes grunted from the sofa. "Well, the county police ought to make something of that," said he. "Why, it is surely obvious that—" But I held up a warning finger. "You are here for a rest, my dear fellow. For heaven's sake, don't get started on a new problem when your nerves are all in shreds." Holmes shrugged his shoulders with a glance of comic resignation towards the Colonel, and the talk drifted away into less dangerous channels. It was destined, however, that all my professional caution should be wasted, for next morning the problem obtruded itself upon us in such a way that it was impossible to ignore it, and our country visit took a turn which neither of us could have anticipated. We were at breakfast when the Colonel's butler rushed in, with all his propriety shaken out of him. "Have you heard the news, sir?" he gasped. "At the Cunningham, sir." "Burglary?" cried the Colonel, with his coffee cup in midair. "Murder!" The Colonel whistled. "By Jove," said he. "Who's killed, then? The J.P. or his son?" "Neither, sir. It was William, the coachman. Shot through the heart, sir. Never spoke again." "Who shot him, then?" "The burglar, sir. He was off like a shot and got clean away. We'd just broken in the pantry window when William came upon him, met his end in saving his master's property." "What time?" "It was last night, sir. Somewhere about 12. "Oh, then, we'll step over presently," said the Colonel, coolly settling down to his breakfast again. "Oh, it's a baddish business," he added when the butler had gone. "Oh, he's our leading squire about here, is old Cunningham. A very decent fellow, too. He'll be cut up over this, for the man has been in his service for years, and was as good a servant. Was evidently the same villains who broke into Acton's and stole that very singular collection, said Holmes thoughtfully. Precisely. Well, it may prove the simplest matter in the world, but all the same, at first glance this is just a little curious, is it not? A gang of burglars acting in the country might be expected to vary the scene of their operations, and not crack 2 cribs in the same district within a few days. When you spoke last night of taking precautions, I remembered that it passed through my mind that this was probably the last parish in England to which the thief or thieves would be likely to turn their attention, which shows that I have still much to learn. I fancy it's some local practitioner, said the Colonel. In that case, of course, Acton's and Cunningham's are just the places he would go for, and since they are far the largest about here. And richest? Well, they ought to be. But they've had a lawsuit for some years, which has sucked the blood out of both of them, I fancy. Old Acton had some claim on half Cunningham's estate, and the lawyers have been at it with both hands. Well, if it's a local villain, there should not be much difficulty in running him down, said Holmes with a yawn. All right, Watson, I don't intend to meddle. Oh, Inspector Forrester, sir, said the butler, throwing open the door. The official, a smart, keen-faced young fellow, stepped into the room. Good morning, Colonel, said he. I hope I don't intrude, but we hear that Mr. Holmes of Baker Street is here. The Colonel waved his hand toward my friend, and the inspector bowed. We thought that perhaps you would care to step across, Mr. Holmes. The fates are against you, Watson, said he, laughing. We were chatting about the matter when you came in, Inspector. Perhaps you can let us have a few details. As he leaned back in his chair in the familiar attitude, I knew that the case was hopeless. We had no clue in the Acton affair, but here we have plenty to go on. There's no doubt it is the same party in each case. The man was seen. Well, yes, sir. But he was off like a deer after the... I don't know how to do this accent that I started. I don't know what I'm doing. It's a lot easier when it's the odd little line, but when it's a whole paragraph, it's a lot more difficult. So, I'm very sorry, and I apologize profusely to the British for the wide array of accents that I'm attempting tonight. It did sound a bit funky Irish. I don't know what I was trying to do. Like, Devonshire? I don't know what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to make some of them sound vaguely posh and some of them sound not posh. And that's that's about the extent of what I'm trying to do. No, that was not Irish. It was not Irish for sure. But it wasn't really anything else either. Okay, anyways. He was off like a deer after the shot that killed poor William Kerwin was fired. Mr. Cunningham saw him from the bedroom window, and Mr. Alec Cunningham saw him from the back passage. It was 11:45 when the alarm broke out. Mr. Cunningham had just got into bed, and Mr. Alec was smoking a pipe in his dressing gown. They both heard William, the coachman, calling for help, and Mr. Alec, he ran down to see what was the matter. The back door was open, and as he came to the foot of the stairs, he saw 2 men wrestling outside together. One of them fired a shot. One of them fired a shot. The other dropped, and the murderer rushed across the garden and over the hedge. Mr. Cunningham, looking out his bedroom window, saw the fellow as he gained the road, but lost sight of him at once. Mr. Alec stopped to see if he could help the dying man, and so the villain got clean away. Beyond the fact that he was a middle-sized man and dressed in some dark stuff, we have no personal clue, but we are making energetic What the fuck am I doing? I'm so sorry, you guys. It's evolving from bad to worse. We are making energetic inquiries, and if he is a stranger, we shall soon find him out. Well, what was this William doing there? Did he say anything before he died? Not a word. He lives at the lodge with his mother, and as he was a very faithful fellow, we imagine that he walked up to the house with the intention of seeing that all was right there. Of course, this Acton business has put everyone on their guard. Well, the robber must have just burst open the door. The lock has been forced when William came upon him. Dark Tweets, welcome in. Thank you for the follow. I need to just, like, nail down a few accents, you know? But I've always been really, really terrible with accents. I really struggle with it. Like, I can hear it and not reproduce it. Did William say anything to his mother before going out? Oh, she's very old and deaf. We can get no information from her. The shock has made her half-witted, but I understand that she was never very bright. There is one important circumstance, however. Look at this. He took a small piece of torn paper from a notebook and spread it out upon his knee. This was found between the finger and thumb of the dead man, what appears to be a fragment torn from a larger sheet. You will observe that the hour mentioned upon it is the very time at which the poor fellow met his fate. You see that his murderer might have torn the rest of the sheet from him, or he might have taken this fragment from the murderer. It reads almost as though it was an appointment. Your dog's name is Faolkor, really? Oh my god, that's amazing. Is he white? That's so great. You're speaking dodgy English. I mean, but I like mishmash things from various different accents and kind of smoosh them together, and then also smoosh in some stuff that's not accurate to anything. I have your Van Helsing voice invade my dreams at times. Not with the double gay awakening. You can't just ask if someone's dog is white. Oh, my bad. My bad. Bright white Shih Tzu Poodle mix. Ankle biter supreme. When he gets the right cut, looks just like Faolkor. Oh my god. That's so cute. Oh, Elijah, thank you for the 5 biddies. Okay. Holmes took up the scrap of paper, a facsimile of which is here produced. And you can't really see it. It's just a little doodle. Well, presuming that it is an appointment, continued the inspector, well, it is, of course, a conceivable theory that this William Kirwan, although he had the reputation of being an honest man, may have been in league with the thief. We may have met him there, maybe even have helped him to break in the door, and then they may have fallen out between themselves. This writing is of extraordinary interest, said Holmes, who had been examining it with intense concentration. These are much deeper waters than I had thought. He sank his head upon his hands, while the inspector smiled at the effect which his case had had upon the famous London specialist. Your last remark, said Holmes presently, as to the possibility of there being an understanding between the burglar and the servant, and this being a note of appointment from one to the other, is an ingenious and not entirely an impossible supposition. But this writing opens up... He sank his head into his hands again and remained for some minutes in the deepest thought. When he raised his face, I was surprised to see that his cheek was tinged with color, and his eyes as bright as before his illness. He sprang to his feet with all his old energy. "I'll tell you what," said he. "I should like to have a quiet little glance into the details of this case. There is something in it which fascinates me extremely. Well, if you will permit me, Colonel, I will leave my friend Watson and you, and I will step around with the inspector to test the truth of one or two little fancies of mine. I will be with you again in half an hour." Oh, hey, Wheel, thank you for gifting us up to Drayson. Yep, we did read Dracula, which I can't tell you exactly when, but at some point will be up on the YouTube. I have a lot of books to get through, so... Oh, hey, well, thank you also for gifting a sub to Tyra. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Oh, Tyra, that's so sweet of you. Thank you. An hour and a half had elapsed before the inspector returned alone. "Mr. Holmes is walking up and down in the field outside," said he. "He wants us all four to go up to the house together." "To Mr. Cunningham's?" "Yes, sir."
"What for?"
The inspector shrugged his shoulders. "I don't quite know, sir. Between ourselves, I think Mr. Holmes has not quite got over his illness yet. He's been behaving very queerly. He's very much excited." "I don't think you need to alarm yourself," said I. "I've usually found that there was method in his madness." "Oh, some folk might say there was madness in his method," muttered the inspector. "But he's all on fire to start, Colonel, so we'd best go out, if you are ready." We found Holmes pacing up and down in the field, his chin sunk upon his breast and his hands thrust into his trouser pockets. "The matter grows in interest," said he. "Watson, your country trip has been a distinct success. I've had a charming morning."
"Oh, you've been up to the scene of the crime, I understand,"
said the colonel. "Yes, the inspector and I have made quite a little reconnaissance together."
"Any success?"
"Well, we have seen some very interesting things. I'll tell you what we did as we walk. First of all, we saw the body of this unfortunate man. He certainly died from a revolver wound, as reported."
"But you doubted it, then?"
"Oh, well, it is well to test everything. Our inspection was not wasted. We then had an interview with Mr. Cunningham and his son, who were able to point out the exact spot where the murderer had broken through the garden hedge in his flight. That was of great interest."
"Naturally."
"Then we had a look at this poor fellow's mother. We could get no information from her, however. She's very old and feeble."
"And what is the result of your investigations?"
"The conviction that the crime is a very peculiar one. Perhaps our visit now may do something to make it less obscure. I think that we both agreed... I think that we are both agreed, Inspector, that the fragment of paper in the dead man's hand, bearing, as it does, the very hour of his death written upon it, is of extreme importance. It should give a clue, Mr. Holmes." "It does give a clue. Whoever wrote that note was the man who brought William Kirwan out of his bed at that hour." "But where's the rest of that sheet of paper?" "I examined the ground carefully, in the hope of finding it," said the inspector. "It was torn out of the dead man's hand. Why was someone so anxious to get possession of it? Because it incriminated him. And what would he do with it? Thrust it into his pocket, most likely, never noticing that a corner of it had been left in the grip of the corpse. If we could get the rest of that sheet, it is obvious that we should have gone a long way towards solving the mystery." "Well, yes, but how can we get at the criminal's pocket before we catch the criminal?" "Oh, well, it was worth thinking over. Then there is another obvious point. The note sent to William. Well, the man who wrote it could not have taken it. Otherwise, of course, he might have delivered his own message by word of mouth. Who brought the note, then? Or did it come through the post? Well, I've made inquiries, said the inspector. William received a letter by the afternoon post yesterday. The envelope was destroyed by him. Excellent, cried Holmes, clapping the inspector on the back. You've seen the postman. Well, it is a pleasure to work with you. Well, here is the lodge, and if you come up, Colonel, I will show you the scene of the crime. He's so excited about this murder. We passed the pretty cottage where the murdered man had lived and walked up an oak-lined avenue to the fine old Queen Anne house, which bears the date of Malplaquet upon the lintel of the door. Okay, there's 2 footnotes in that sentence. Okay, a Queen Anne house is basically just the style of architecture when Queen Anne was ruling Britain, which was from 1707 to 1714, a time when Palladian architecture was popular. Okay, all right. The date of Malplaquet, the Battle of Malplaquet took place on September 11th, 1709, when Marlborough and Eugene of Savoy defeated the French in the French village of the same name during the War of the Spanish Succession. It's a medium house-shaped house. So that's very useful, thank you. We're not taking a pause, I'm just stretching. Yeah, I've never heard that phrase, a Queen Anne house. I've heard, like, Georgian architecture and, like, Tudor-style houses. Interesting. Okay. Queen Anne's lace is, a herb, right? Doesn't it look similar to wild carrot, but it's like poisonous? Anyway. Throw the door open, officer, said Holmes. Now, it was on those stairs that young Mr. Cunningham stood and saw the 2 men struggling, just where we are. Old Mr. Cunningham was at that window, the second on the left, and he saw the fellow get away just to the left of that bush. So did the son. They're both sure of it on account of the bush. Then Mr. Alec ran out and knelt beside the wounded man. The ground is very hard, you see. There are no marks to guide us. As he spoke, 2 men came down the garden path from round the angle of the house. The one was an elderly man with a strong, deep-lined, heavy-eyed face. The other, a dashing young fellow, whose bright, smiling expression and showy dress were in strange contrast with the business which had brought us there. "Still at it, then?" said he to Holmes. "I thought you Londoners were never at fault. You don't seem to be so very quick after all." "Oh, you must give us a little time," said Holmes good-humouredly. "You'll want it," said young Alec Cunningham. "Why, I don't see that we have any clue at all." "Well, there's only one," answered the inspector. "We thought that if we could only find— Oh, good heavens, Mr. Holmes, what's the matter?" My poor friend's face had suddenly assumed the most dreadful expression. His eyes rolled upwards, his features writhed in agony, and with a suppressed groan, he dropped his face upon the ground. Horrified at the suddenness and severity of the attack, we carried him into the kitchen, where he lay back in a large chair and breathed heavily for some minutes. Finally, with a shamefaced apology for his weakness, he rose once more. Is he actually sick, or was he just doing that to get the inspector to not tell young Cunningham about the clue? I feel like it might be the second. Oh, it is a wild carrot. Okay. Cool. I think it was... Yeah, we'll see. I think it might be. Very, very convenient timing otherwise. Watson would tell you that I have only just recovered from a severe illness, he explained. I'm liable to these sudden nervous attacks. Oh, shall I send you home in my trap? Oh, no, sorry, this old Cunningham. Shall I send you home in my trap? Asked old Cunningham. Well, since I am here, there is one point on which I should like to feel sure. I can very easily verify it. What is it? Well, it seems to me that it is just possible that the arrival of this poor fellow William was not before but after the entrance of the burglar into the house. You appear to take it for granted that although the door was forced, the robber never got in. Oh, I fancy that is quite obvious, said Mr. Cunningham gravely. Why, my son Alec had not yet gone to bed, and he would certainly have heard anyone moving about. Hi, Floral. Hello. How you doing? You bet he got a hand in young Cunningham's breast pocket, too? What? Like, just to, like, cop a feel? Or to find the rest of the letter? For the note, okay. Oh my goodness. Happy New Year, Floral. How are you doing? Alright. Where was he sitting? I was sitting smoking in my dressing room. Which window was that? The last on the left, next to my father's. Both your lamps were lit, of course. Undoubtedly. There are some very singular points here, said Holmes, smiling. But it's not extraordinary that a burglar, and a burglar who had had some previous experience, should deliberately break into a house at a time when he could see from the lights that two of the family were still afoot. Well, he must have been a cool hand. Well, of course. If the case were not an odd one, we should not have been driven to ask you for an Oh, wait. What? Okay, Mr. Alec is young Cunningham, right? Sorry, the way that it's formatted. I don't know who says he must have been a cool hand. It's like as if it should be Alex, but then Alex starts his line afterwards. I don't know. At a time when he could see from the lights that two of the family were still afoot. Well, he must have been a cool hand. Well, of course. If the case were not an odd one, we should not have been driven to ask you for an explanation, said Mr. Alec. But as to your idea that the man had robbed the house before William tackled him, I think it a most absurd notion. Shouldn't we have found the place disarranged and missed the things which had been taken? It depends on what the things were, said Holmes. You must remember that we are dealing with a burglar, who is a very peculiar fellow, and who appears to work on lines of his own. A look, for example, at the queer lot of things which he took from Acton's. What was it? A ball of string, a letter weight, I don't know what other odds and ends. Oh, we are quite in your hands, Mr. Holmes, said old Cunningham. Anything which you or the inspector may suggest will most certainly be done. Well, in the first place, said Holmes, I should like you to offer a reward coming from yourself, for the officials may take a little time before they would agree upon the sum, and these things cannot be done too promptly. I have jotted down the form here, if you would not mind signing it. £50 was quite enough, I thought. I would willingly give 500, said the JP, taking the slip of paper and the pencil which Holmes handed to him. Oh, this is not quite correct, however, he added, glancing over the document. I don't know why I made him so old. Like, he's probably not that old. He's just the older one. Oh well. Young Cunningham and ancient Cunningham. I wrote it rather hurriedly. Well, you see, you begin, whereas at about 1:45 on Tuesday morning an attempt was made, and so on. It was at 11:45, as a matter of fact. Well, I was pained at the mistake, for I knew how keenly Holmes would feel any slip of the kind. Oh no, Holmes wouldn't make a mistake like that. If he made a mistake, it's on purpose to catch something out. It was his speciality to be accurate as to fact, but his recent illness had shaken him, and this one little incident was enough to show me that he was still far from being himself. He was obviously embarrassed for an instant, while the inspector raised his eyebrows and Alec Cunningham burst into a laugh. The old gentleman corrected the mistake, however, and handed the paper back to Holmes. Get it printed as soon as possible, he said. I think your idea is an excellent one. Holmes put the slip of paper carefully away in his pocketbook. And now, said he, it would really be a good thing that we should all go over the house together and make certain that this rather erratic burglar did not, after all, carry anything away with him. Before entering, Holmes made an examination of the door, which had been forced. It was evident that a chisel or strong knife had been thrust in, and the lock forced back with it. We could see the marks in the wood where it had been pushed in. Getting his handwriting, that's a great idea, yeah. Because otherwise, he just has to sign it, right? And a signature does not have to look anything like your actual handwriting. It can just be a weird mark. But if he has to actually correct something, yeah, I think that it's a good chance that you're right on that one. It's not my only Crohn's voice, that's only ancient man voice. It's an old man voice, not an old lady voice. I know they're very similar. Very similar, but slightly different. We could see the marks in the wood where it had been pushed in. You don't use bars, then? He asked. We've never found it necessary. You don't keep a dog? Yes, but he's chained on the other side of the house. When do the servants go to bed? About 10. I understand that William was usually in bed also at that hour. Yes. It is singular that on this particular night he should have been up. Now, I should be very glad if you would have the kindness to show us over the house, Mr. Cunningham. You're glad his name was Sherlock and not another old-timey name like Ichabod? That would seem weird. Ichabod Holmes? I don't know, because then we'd associate it with that. And then we'd be like, oh, I'm glad his name's Ichabod, not some other old-timey name. Old is more powerful than gender. I love that. Yeah, It's like we start kind of ungendered and we end up kind of ungendered. We return to baby. Have you watched the Enola Holmes movies? No. They're on my like to watch list though. A stone-flagged passage, with the kitchens branching away from it, led by a wooden staircase directly to the first floor of the house. It came out upon the landing opposite to a second, more ornamental stair, which led up from the front hall. Out of this landing opened the drawing room and several bedrooms, including those of Mr. Cunningham and his son. Holmes walked slowly, taking keen note of the architecture of the house. I could tell from his expression that he was on a hot scent, and yet I could not in the least imagine in what direction his inferences were leading him. "My good sir," said Mr. Cunningham, with some impatience, "this is surely very unnecessary. Well, that is my room at the end of the stairs, and my son's is the one beyond it. I leave it to your judgment whether it was possible for the thief to have come up here without disturbing us." Bath salts, hello, welcome in. Thank you for the raid. Hello, hello. Oh my goodness. Hello, hi, good to see you. Thank you so much for the raid. How was your stream? What were you getting up to? Oh, Fidge, you got in there first. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. What were you streaming? Kyle Holmes. No, but I mean Sherlock is a very I'm not aware of any other was that a real name? I've never heard of anyone else being named Sherlock. Swift cycling racing. What? Like biking? Wait, like IRL biking or like stationary biking? You don't feel good? Oh my goodness. Go lie down. Oh no. Drink lots of electrolytes and things. Sherlock Chalamet actually sounds awesome. It's cycling, racing indoors. Okay, but you use like actual stationary bike? It's a fancy digital bike? That's actually super cool. But oh my goodness, bath salts. Please go take care of yourself after your stream. Whatever you need to do. Like obviously, happy to have you hang out. But please go take care of yourself. Make sure you're drinking, having electrolytes. Go have a shower to warm water is good on sore muscles. Whatever you need to do. Thank you for the raid though. It is really good to see you. Wait, the recent Sherlock is Henry Cavill? There's a... What's the most... Oh wait, is that in Enola Holmes? Do you have rose petals on your head? No, I've got, my hair is braided. They're braids that I've then wrapped around my head to form a headband of braided hair. Not petals, but it's really cute that it looks like that. I like that. Gonna head home from work? Okay, sounds good. Drive safe. I love Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock. And I know this is a hot take. I love Andrew Scott as Moriarty. I mean, I can't judge. I don't know. I'm not gonna make any comments about Henry Cavill as Sherlock. Maybe he's good. he seems too, like, I don't know. I kind of imagine Sherlock as being, like, not well muscled. Like, he alternates between wasting away in depression and, like, doing too much cocaine. He's like a crazy manic artist. I see Sherlock as being lanky and skinny and frenetic. You liked Iron Man as Sherlock? Those movies were okay and they were fun. I feel like Robert Downey Jr. was trying too much to, like, make Sherlock seem like autistic, but in a way where he just, like, stares off while he's, like, muttering things, you know? He's just like that wall-eyed stare, and he's like, well, surely this blah, 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 blah. And I don't know. When I started reading these, what I got from the book, and this is only my interpretation, I'm not saying this is the way that, like, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle intended it, but I get the impression, like, Sherlock comes across as excitable and manic, and I tried to make him very, like, I try to make him excitable and enthusiastic and energetic, as opposed to, like, I'm a, you know, quirky autist who speaks in a monotone and doesn't make eye contact. Do you know what I mean? So those movies were fun. Like, I did enjoy watching them, and I like Jude Law in them. But yeah, so far my favorite interpretation is Benedict Cumberbatch. They had cocaine in Sherlock years. Sherlock was such a drug addict. It was made a name after Sherlock Holmes became... Okay, cool. The guy in the 80s with the big nose. I haven't seen that one, so... Yeah. I have not watched all the versions. Yeah. Also, hi Brewmaster, welcome. Benedict is second best. Jeremy Brett is number one. Okay, I haven't seen that one. Henry gives off the autistic, but it's like the acting autistic vibes. Do you know what I mean? More serious, stoic, but he's handsome and can look at a wall and I'll find him interesting. Okay. I don't find him attractive, so I don't get that bit of it. But, you know, he was alright in The Witcher. He just doesn't look like a real person. It's like you can look at, like, a beautifully carved statue of a man and be like, wow, that's a beautiful figure of a man, but you're not going to be attracted to the statue, you know? That's kind of how I feel about Henry Cavill. I'm like, yes, that's a fine figure of a man. But apparently he's a very, very kind person. Apparently he's awesome, like, as a human being, which I think is cool. Sherlock was on morphine and coke and opium. Yeah. Yeah, I thought Benedict did a great job. Yeah. Anyways, but, like, I can understand how people would, because he's very conventionally attractive. Yeah. But I do wanna watch that series. Bowman said he's a fine figure of a man. You bet your breeches he is, slurp. Yeah, a lot of, like, straight dudes. No, I don't know what Bowman identifies as, but just, like, dudes in general, like, including straight dudes, just have, like, unabashed, like, bro crushes on Henry Cavill, which I think is cute. I think that's great that dudes can just be like, yeah, I have, like, a hetero crush on this dude. I think that's great. He's not supposed to be conventionally attractive. So far, I haven't seen a single description which says that he is or isn't attractive. I haven't seen it. It has not been specified so far in the literature. It barely describes him. It doesn't talk about what he looks like. So I don't know if he's supposed to be attractive or not. I just feel like, given his lifestyle, he would not be well muscled. Where is he getting those muscles from? He would be lanky. Right? Jon Stewart is your hetero man crush. Fair enough. He's got the face and body of heroes. He's who most straight boys wanted to grow up to be. Right. Plus he's like nerdy and kind. Like, yeah, no, he seems like a great... This is not me... I want to be clear. I'm not shitting on him at all. I just, like, don't actively feel attracted to him. That's all. You saw an attractive statue in Dublin. Oh, you're talking about Molly Malone. That's so fucked up, man. There's a statue of Molly Malone in Dublin. It's a copper statue. You know, it goes green, but her tits are all shiny copper because people grope her. Where a goon tries to intimidate him by bending a fireplace iron poker, and Holmes just grabs it afterwards and unbends it with a little more than a grab. I don't know. I don't remember that, but we have not read all the stories. Alright. Basil from The Great Mouse Detective was a good Sherlock. Fatalisk! You were so right. You're so right. I love The Great Mouse Detective. It is one of the best Disney movies and is criminally underrated. Yeah, I have a picture of myself with the statue of Molly Malone. Do you know what I'm not doing? Grabbing her titties. Okay, physical traits from the canon. Over 6 feet tall, excessively lean, giving a towering impression. Face is narrow and sharp, with a thin hawk-like nose and firm lips. Eyes are sharp and piercing, gray, sometimes with a distant look. Hair is black, hands ink-stained and chemical-stained, but remarkably delicate. So, Benedict Cumberbatch, basically. You grab statues, titties and balls. Alright. Okay, let's jump back into the story, though. Oh, Radican is amazing as a villain. So good. The whole thing is so good. Okay, back to the story. Right. The old ancient Cunningham is like, why are you searching our rooms? Those are our rooms. I leave it to your judgment whether it's possible for the thief to have come up here without disturbing us. You must try round and get on a fresh scent, I fancy, said the son with a rather malicious smile. Oh, still, I must ask you to humor me a little further. I should like, for example, to see how far the windows of the bedrooms commanded this front. This, I understand, is your son's room. He pushed open the door. And that, I presume, is the dressing room, in which he sat smoking when the alarm was given. Where does the window of that look out to? He stepped across the bedroom, pushed open the door, and glanced round the other chamber. I hope you are satisfied now, said Mr. Cunningham testily. Thank you. I think I've seen all that I wished. Then, if it is really necessary, we can go into my room, if it is not too much trouble. The JP shrugged his shoulders and led the way into his own chamber, which was a plainly furnished and commonplace room. As we moved across it, in the direction of the window, Holmes fell back until he and I were the last of the group. Near the foot of the bed was a small square table on which stood a dish of oranges and a carafe of water. As we passed it, Holmes, to my unutterable astonishment, leaned over in front of me and deliberately knocked the whole thing over. The glass smashed into 1,000 pieces, and the fruit rolled about into every corner of the room. Well, you've done it now, Watson, he said coolly. A pretty mess you've made of the carpet. I stooped in some confusion and began to pick up the fruit, understanding that, for some reason, my companion desired me to take the blame upon myself. The others did the same and set the table on its legs again. "Hello!" cried the inspector. I'm sorry. British folk. "Where's he got to?" Holmes had disappeared. "Wait here an instant," said young Alec Cunningham. "The fellow is off his head, in my opinion. Come with me, father, and see where he has got to." They rushed out of the room, leaving the inspector, the colonel, and me staring at each other. "Upon my word, I am inclined to agree with Mr. Alec," said the official. "Well, it may be the effect of this illness, but it seems to me that—" His words were cut short by a sudden scream of "Help! Help! Murder!" With a thrill, I recognized the voice as that of my friend. I rushed madly into the room. I rushed madly from the room onto the landing. The cries, which had sunk down into a hoarse, inarticulate shouting, came from the room which we had first visited. I dashed in, and on into the dressing room beyond. The two Cunninghams were bending over the prostrate figure of Sherlock Holmes, the younger clutching his throat with both hands, while the elder seemed to be twisting one of his wrists. In an instant, the three of us had torn them away from him, and Holmes staggered to his feet, very pale and evidently greatly exhausted. "Arrest these men, Inspector," he gasped. "On what charge?" "That of murdering their coachman, William Kirwan." The inspector stared about him in bewilderment. "Oh, come on. Oh, come now, Mr. Holmes," said he at last. "I'm sure you don't really mean to—" "Tut, man, look at their faces," cried Holmes curtly. Never, certainly, have I seen a plainer confession of guilt upon human countenances. The older man seemed numbed and dazed, with a heavy, sullen expression upon his strongly marked face. The son, on the other hand, had dropped all that jaunty, dashing style which had characterized him, and the ferocity of a dangerous wild beast gleamed in his dark eyes and distorted his handsome features. The inspector said nothing, but stepping to the door, he blew his whistle. Two of his constables came at the call. "Oh, I've no alternative, Mr. Cunningham," said he. "I trust that this may all prove to be an absurd mistake, but you can see that—" "Would you? Drop it!" He struck out with his hand, and a revolver, which the younger man was in the act of cocking, clattered down upon the floor. "Keep that," said Holmes, quickly putting his foot upon it. "You will find it useful at the trial. But this is what we really wanted." He held up a little crumpled piece of paper. "The remainder of the sheet!" cried the inspector. "Precisely. And where was it?" "Where I was sure it must be. I'll make the whole matter clear to you presently. I think, Colonel, that you and Watson might return now, and I will be with you again in an hour at the furthest. The inspector and I must have a word with the prisoners, but you will certainly see me back at luncheon time." Sherlock Holmes was as good as his word. For about 1 o'clock he rejoined us in the Colonel's smoking room. He was accompanied by a little elderly gentleman who was introduced to me as the Mr. Acton whose house had been the scene of the original burglary. "Good night, Buddha. Sleep well. Sleep well." Also, I missed saying hello to Tony over on YouTube. Sorry about that, Tony. Hello, welcome. If you're still here, it's good to have you here. Okay. "I wished Mr. Acton to be present while I demonstrated this small matter to you," said Holmes, "for it is natural that he should take a keen interest in the details. I'm afraid, my dear Colonel, that you must regret the hour that you took in such a stormy petrel as I am."
"On the contrary," answered the Colonel warmly, "I consider it the greatest privilege to have been permitted to study your methods of working. I confess that they quite surpass my expectations, and that I am utterly unable to account for your result. I've not yet seen the vestige of a clue. I'm afraid that my explanation may disillusionize you, but it has always been my habit to hide none of my methods, either from my friend Watson or from anyone who might take an intelligent interest in them. But first, as I am rather shaken by the knocking about which I had in the dressing room, I think that I shall help myself to a dash of your brandy, Colonel. My strength has been rather tried of late." "I trust you had no more of those nervous attacks?"
Sherlock Holmes laughed heartily. "We will come to that in its turn," said he. "I will lay an account of the case before you in its due order, showing you the various points which guided me in my decision. Pray, interrupt me if there is any interference which is not perfectly clear to you. It is of the highest importance in the art of detection to be able to recognize out a number of facts which are incidental and which are vital. Otherwise, your energy and attention must be dissipated instead of being concentrated. Now, in this case, there was not the slightest doubt in my mind, from the first, that the key of the whole matter must be looked for in the scrap of paper in the dead man's hand. Now, before going into this, I would draw your attention to the fact that if Alec Cunningham's narrative were correct, and if the assailant, after shooting William Cawan, had instantly fled, then it obviously could not be he who tore the paper from the dead man's hand. But if it was not he, it must have been Alec Cunningham himself, for by the time the old man had descended, several servants were upon the scene. The point is a simple one, but the inspector had overlooked it because he had started with the supposition that these county magnates had had nothing to do with the matter. Now, I make a point of never having any prejudices, and of following docilely wherever fact may lead me. And so, in the very first stage of the investigation, I found myself looking a little askance at the part which had been played by Mr. Alec Cunningham. And now I made a very careful examination of the corner of paper which the inspector had submitted to us. It was at once clear to me that it formed part of a very remarkable document. Here it is. Do you not now observe something very suggestive about it?
"It has a very irregular look," said the Colonel.
"My dear sir," cried Holmes, "there cannot be the least doubt in the world that it has been written by two persons doing alternate words. When I draw your attention to the strong T's of at and to,
and ask you to compare them with the weak ones of quarter and 12, you will instantly recognize the fact. A very brief analysis of those 4 words would enable you to say with the utmost confidence that the learn and the may be are written in the stronger hand, and the what in the weaker.
Hiya, Doken. Good to see you. Hello.
By Jove, it's as clear as day, cried the colonel. Why on earth should 2 men write a letter in such a fashion?
Well, obviously, the business was a bad one, and one of the men who distrusted the other...
One of the men who distrusted the other was determined that whatever was done, each should have an equal hand in it. Now, of the 2 men, it is clear that the one who wrote the at and to was the ringleader.
Well, how do you get at that?
We might deduce it from the mere character of the one hand as compared with the other, but we have more assured reasons than that for supposing it. If you examine this scrap with attention, you will come to the conclusion that the man with the stronger hand wrote all his words first, leaving blanks for the other to fill up. These blanks were not always sufficient, and you could see that the second man had to squeeze to fit his quarter in between the at and the to, showing the latter were already written. The man who wrote all his words first is undoubtedly the man who planned this affair.
Oh, excellent, cried Mr. Acton. I'm also making him ancient. Small note, when they're saying the word hand, like the stronger and weaker hand, hand was just used as like a short term for handwriting. Like someone's personal handwriting style, that's their hand. So it's not talking about their physical hand, but more their writing, that one of their like the penmanship is stronger with one of them, which could also be extended potentially to someone with like an actually weaker physical hand, could have weaker handwriting because of it. So it can be both, but not necessarily. Hi, Blue Jay, how you doing? A synecdoche. You're gonna tap out now, Fidge? Sean's in charge? Okay. Puppy's gonna be uncomfy in the morning. Okay, sleep well, Fidge. Thank you for hanging out so long. Sleep well, Sean. I'm glad you're here. Alright. We're coming to the end. Sherlock does like his, his moments where he gets to explain everything. It's one of your favorite words and things, like saying hands when meaning sailors on a ship, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Hi, Casey King. Hello. Okay. But very superficial, said Holmes. We come now, however, to a point which is of importance. You may not be aware that the deduction of a man's age from his writing is one which has been brought to considerable accuracy by experts. In normal cases, one can place a man in his true decade with tolerable confidence. Well, I say normal cases because ill health and physical weakness reproduce the signs of old age, even when the invalid is a youth. In this case, looking at the bold, strong hand of one, and the rather broken-backed appearance of the other, which still retains its legibility, although the T's have begun to lose their crossings, we can say that the one was a young man, and the other was advanced in years, without being positively decrepit. Oh, excellent, cried Mr. Acton again. There is a further point, however, which is subtler and of greater interest. No, this isn't ancient Cunningham, this is ancient Acton now. The other old rich man. There is a further point, however, which is subtler and of greater interest.
There is something in common between these two hands. They belong to men who are blood relatives. May be most obvious to you in the Greek E's, but to me there are many smaller points which indicate the same thing. I have no doubt at all that a family mannerism can be traced in these two specimens of writing. I am only, of course, giving you the leading results now of my examination of the paper. There were 23 other deductions, which would be of more interest to experts than to you. They all tended to deepen the impression upon my mind that the Cunninghams, father and son, had written this letter. How does that indicate that they're a blood relative? What about, like, a ward or an adopted child or something? Like, as long as they grew up, like, learning from you, it should be the same thing, right? Acton, I'm picturing him tiny for some reason. There's a footnote on the whole deducing a man's age from his writing. Richard Lancelin Green. Lancelin. My goodness. Such a pretty name. In Baker Street Dozen, revealed that Alexander Cargill, an Edinburgh-based handwriting expert, sent Conan Doyle an article he had written, Health in Handwriting, in which he claimed that the age of the writer could be estimated from his or her handwriting, and suggested that he used it as the basis for a story. Conan Doyle thanked him and admitted, "I am almost afraid to write you, for fear you should discover imbecility in the dots of my eyes, or incipient brain softening in my capitals." And there's another endnote about the 23 other deductions that Holmes mentioned he had, which could have included such phenomena as whether the writers were left-handed or right-handed, the type of pen, paper, quality of paper, whether the writing had been blotted, and so on. Val already deduced my age by the way I put 2 spaces after a period. I'm sorry, Artax. That's one of the giveaways. Your handwriting's terrible, but your mom's handwriting is great, so you called bullcrap. Okay, but handwriting isn't really taught the same way it was in the past. I imagine that if you're being, like, really taught by, like, you're not going to school, you're being taught by, like, your parents, you would pick up more of their mannerisms. Whereas, like, when we go to school, first off, we don't learn penmanship in the same way. But even if we are, we're being taught by multiple different teachers. Like, we're being exposed to a lot of different hands. We're not getting, like, beaten for not, like, crossing our T's the proper way. Like, it's just there's more room to have, yeah, variances. Anthony Darling, thank you for the follow. Welcome. I love that. That makes me think of the Darling family in Peter Pan. You're Gen X, you don't do that freaky shit. It is more of a boomer thing. It's a boomer thing. It's the 2 spaces after a period comes from people who learn typing on typewriters. The spaces on typewriters, it made it more legible if you added an extra space after a period, but with modern word processors, the kerning takes that into account, so you no longer need to do it. You certainly have the voice of a reader with your delivery. Tony, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad you're enjoying it. It is interesting, though, like, even without studying handwriting analysis at all, which I think there's something to it, but not as much as, you know, like, you can tell often if people are right or left-handed and things like that. But often you can tell if the writer is male or female. Which is not always, and not as much like
even like a few generations back, when all children were taught like proper penmanship, there's a less visible difference. But I feel like since we've like switched over to ballpoint pens and we're not doing cursive, it's a lot easier to tell. When you were in grade school, you had language class and your penmanship was graded, so we had to learn to write properly. Yeah, we had a thing where we were given a pen license. We weren't allowed to graduate from using a pencil to a pen until we could like prove that we could do cursive. And once we were skilled enough with cursive, then we were allowed to do our homework in pen instead of pencil. Which felt like, ooh, like I'm a big kid now, you know, so it really incentivized it. I remember I got a certificate. Sounds like torture? No, I thought it was fun. But I'm kind of nerdy like that, so. You've been told your writing looks like a woman's writing? That's kind of probably a compliment. Not that men can have beautiful handwriting. Like, men are equally capable. But it seems that, like, men and women, if both of them are equally not training their penmanship, women, and this is a generalization, obviously, women seem to have a little bit more, oh gosh, what's it called? Like the fine motor control, fine motor skills. But anyone who works at it is able to get up to, do you know what I mean? Like that's just like for people that aren't training it at all. Yeah. That's the sign of a great ghostwriter, to be able to write as if they're a male or female. Well, you're touching on something very different there, Hadoken, which is the voice of a man or a woman. And you're right that if you want to be a good ghostwriter, you should be able to disguise your authorial voice as anything. I'm talking about the literal handwriting. Yeah, and handwriting is definitely being lost as an art, but that does create more room for like fancy handwriting and like calligraphy and stuff to rise as like even more of an art form. But anyway, you were told your handwriting looks like crow's feet running over ink and paper. You know what, Hadoken, I also don't know if the person who said that to you meant it as a compliment or not, but I would take it as one because that sounds cool as fuck. I love that. That's such a vibe. Ember Fern, pen licenses are a UK school thing too? Oh, nice. You have to write in pencil till you're allowed to use a pen. That's awesome. I bet kids don't do that in school anymore, which is kind of sad, but when you had to start learning cursive, you were devastated, barely mastered regular writing, seemed an unfair spike in difficulty. Yeah, I mean, like, and I've talked about this before, but cursive really makes sense when you think about people writing with nibs, whether it was like a literal like goose quill or a dip pen or a fountain pen. The way the nibs are, you can really, like, you have to kind of like put more pressure on downstrokes. You can't really drag up in the way that you can with a ballpoint pen. And so having kind of like a flow to and also specifically with dip pens, you don't want to be lifting it off the paper too much, because every time you place it on the paper, there's a chance of like splotching with ink, right? So the style of doing cursive directly grew out of the tools that we were using to write. And once we stopped using those tools, it's just not as necessary. You started using cursive in the second half of first grade. Yeah, when did I think we did our pen licenses in grade 4. So like, I don't know, age like 8 or 9, I guess. You were attempting cursive in kindergarten because you legit tried to copy your dad's signature. Right. You were never allowed to use anything but crayon to this day. Hi, Duck Duck. You never learn cursive. You struggle to grasp handwriting anyway. I mean, it's never too late. It's never too late. You can even get like practice books where you like trace the letters over. I mean, I remember having to do that. It's like you write like a row of like cursive A's and a row of cursive B's, and then you start connecting them together. It's like a lot of manual practice, right? You were taught with a dip pen? That seems really unusual. I mean, that's cool. It seems unusual. All right, let's finish the story, you guys. Okay. Bloody-da-da-da. Okay. Right. He's like, it's the Cunninghams. Having got so far, my next step was, of course, to examine into the details of the crime and see how far they would help us. I went up to the house with the inspector and saw all that was to be seen. The wound upon the dead man was, as I was able to determine with absolute confidence, caused by a shot from a revolver fired at a distance of something over 4 yards. There was no powder blackening on the clothes. Evidently, therefore, Alec Cunningham had lied when he said that the two men were struggling when the shot was fired. Again, both father and son agreed as to the place where the man escaped into the road. At that point, however, as it happens, there is a broadish ditch, moist at the bottom. As there were no indications of boot marks about this ditch, I was absolutely sure not only that the Cunninghams had again lied, but that there had never been any unknown man upon the scene at all. And now I had to consider the motive of this singular crime. To get at this, I endeavored first of all to solve the reason of the original burglary at Mr. Acton's. I understood that something which the Colonel told us that a lawsuit... I understood from something which the Colonel told us that a lawsuit had been going on between you, Mr. Acton, and the Cunninghams. Of course, it instantly occurred to me that they had broken into your library with the intention of getting at some document which might be of importance in their case.
Precisely so, said Mr. Acton. There can be no possible doubt as to their intentions. I have the clearest claim upon half their present estate, and if they could have found a single paper, which, fortunately, was in the strong box of my solicitors, they would undoubtedly have crippled our case.
There you are, said Holmes, smiling. It was a dangerous, reckless attempt, in which I seem to trace the influence of young Alec. Well, having found nothing, they tried to divert suspicion by making it appear to be an ordinary burglary, to which end they carried off whatever they could lay their hands upon. Not that it's all clear enough, but there was much that was still obscure. What I wanted above all was to get the missing part of that note. I was certain that Alex had torn it out of the dead man's hand, and almost certainly that he must have thrust it into the pocket of his dressing gown. Where else could he have put it? The only question was whether it was still there. It was worth an effort to find out, and for that object, we all went up to the house. Oh my gosh, shorthand is like a whole other language, yeah. The Cunninghams joined us, as you doubtless remember, outside the kitchen door. It was, of course, of the very first importance that they should not be reminded of the existence of the paper. Otherwise, they would naturally destroy it without delay. The inspector was about to tell them the importance which was attached to it when, by the luckiest chance in the world, I tumbled down in a sort of fit, and so changed the conversation.
Good heavens, cried the Colonel, laughing. Do you mean to say all our sympathy was wasted, and your fit an imposture?
Speaking professionally, it was admirably done, cried I, looking in amazement at this man who was forever confounding me with some new phase of his astuteness. It is an art which is often useful, said he. When I recovered, I managed, by a device, which had perhaps some little merit of ingenuity, to get old Cunningham to write the word 12, so that I might compare it with the 12 upon the paper. Ugh, what an ass I have been, I exclaimed.
I could see that you were commiserating with me over my weakness, said Holmes, laughing. I was sorry to cause you the sympathetic pain which I know that you felt. We then went upstairs together, and having entered the room and seen the dressing gown hanging up behind the door, I contrived, by upsetting a table, to engage their attention for the moment, and slip back to examine the pockets. I'd hardly got the paper, however, which was, as I had expected, in one of them, when the two Cunninghams were on me, and would, I verily believe, have murdered me then and there, but for your prompt and friendly aid. As it is, I feel that young man's grip on my throat now. The father has twisted my wrist round in an effort to get the paper out of my hand. They saw that I must know all about it, you see, and the sudden change from absolute security to complete despair made them perfectly desperate. I had a little talk with old Cunningham afterwards as to the motive of his crime. He was tractable enough, though his son was a perfect demon, ready to blow out his own or anybody's brains if he could have got to his revolver. When Cunningham saw that the case against him was so strong, he lost all heart, made a clean breast of everything. It seems that William had secretly followed his two masters on the night when they made their raid upon Mr. Acton's, and having thus got them into his power, proceeded, under threats of exposure, to levy blackmail upon them. Mr. Alec, however, was a dangerous man to play games of that sort with. It was a stroke of positive genius on his part to see in the burglary scare, which was convulsing the countryside, an opportunity of plausibly getting rid of the man whom he feared. William was decoyed up and shot, and had they only got the whole of the note and paid a little more attention to detail in their accessories, it's very possible that suspicion might never have been aroused. "And the note?" I asked. Sherlock Holmes placed the subjoined paper before us. "It is very much the sort of thing that I expected," said he. "Of course, we do not yet know what the relations may have been between Alec Cunningham, William Corwan, and Annie Morrison. The result shows that the trap was skillfully baited. I am sure that you cannot fail to be delighted with the traces of heredity shown in the P's and in the tails of the G's. The absence of the eye dots in the old man's writing is also most characteristic. Watson, I think our quiet rest in the country has been a distinct success, and I shall certainly return much invigorated to Baker Street tomorrow." End of story. Hi, Kaylin. Hello, hello. Although, are you 2026 Kaylin now? Yeah, past Kaylin. Sorry, I definitely missed some messages. It is good to be reading Sherlock again, though, eh? A cursive writing book sounds useful. Hell yeah, Emberfern. I've thought about getting one myself. I think it'd be fun. Mixture of cursive and regular script, because you can't remember a lot of the cursive form. Yeah, I think a lot of us like come up with our own version of it, because it is easier when writing quickly to like connect the letters and not lift the pen cleanly off the paper with each letter. But it's not always, even if it's like connected writing, it's not always like, there's a few different proper like cursive styles that like to be like properly done have to be done a certain way, which doesn't actually matter, but you'd love to learn real calligraphy. It sounds like, I think it's a lot of practice, yeah. Feather, if you were going to get into that, going with a feather quill would be like diving in the deep end. Like, start with a fountain pen and a nice nib, you know. 2026 Kaylin is with us. Heck yeah. Welcome to the future, the present. Welcome.
Picasso, hello, welcome to chat. Hello, hello. We do read here, Ashley. Oh, you fell asleep watching your stream, you just woke up. Oh, I'm sorry if I woke you up with volume or noise, but I'm glad you were able to get some sleep. So the question here, is soft cover the same as paperback? Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. I think I haven't been here in about 4 months. It has been a little while. Yeah. I hope you're doing well, though. You're so old, all your books are hardcover. I mean, it's nothing to do with how old you are. It has to do with how promptly you buy a book. Books generally come out in hardcover first, and then once they've been out for a while, then they come out in paperback, which is cheaper. So if you like can't wait for it to come out in paperback, you're gonna get hardcover. Or if you're someone that just really likes hardcover, like they're nicer, they last longer, they're generally like better quality, but more expensive. I'm so old, all my books are parchment scrolls. I'm so old, all my books are cuneiform tablets complaining about really shitty copper. 3 hours ago you had to call the fire brigade. Oh my god. Oh, are things okay? It is mainly a preference, Ashley, absolutely. Yeah. You helped evacuate holy shit, Caitlin. Oh my god. Well, it sounds like you were very helpful and everyone's okay. That's good. I'm sure they're very grateful for the help that you provided. Damn. Damn. Alright, okay. Stream is not totally over, but we are going to wrap up on the YouTube side because that's all the reading we're going to do for tonight. We read 2 stories from the Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes. We have 5 stories left in that collection. But next reading stream will be on Sunday. Oh, Ashley, I'm sorry. I know. Next stream will be on Sunday. We're going to be starting the Odyssey. I'm excited. So I hope you can join us for that. Sean has just popped a link in the YouTube chat. That's the Twitch stream. We're not going to go much longer on Twitch, but if you want to catch the end of it, if you're only on YouTube right now, feel free to come on over to Twitch to catch the end of the stream. But otherwise, also just in terms of like YouTube stuff, yes, I haven't uploaded any new edited chapters since A Christmas Carol. Took a little bit of a break over the holidays. I will probably get to editing after the weekend. I still have a lot of loose ends to tie up and things to catch up on. You have no idea. So, but starting next week, I'm gonna get back into editing and start a new upload of a new book, which I'm not 100% sure. We were talking about maybe Bambi as the next one. This is like coming from the books we've already read that I have downloaded and stored. Anyways, we'll see. Ashley, what the fuck did you say that got censored? What? You've got a what kind of idea? Okay, let me just say goodbye to YouTube. Goodbye, YouTube. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed this, whether you're watching live or, you know, coming to it afterwards, if you want to drop a like, subscribe if you haven't, leave a comment. Apparently these things help. One of my goals, hopes, it's not a good, one of my hopes for 2026 is to get both my YouTube channels monetized, so I would very, very much appreciate it. Okay, I will see you guys on Sunday. Bye, YouTube.